Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Well, I think we have Josh, did you want to say anything before I start with the introduction? Or should I just go ahead?
No, Ted, go ahead. Yeah, you've
Okay.
got it.
So I'll start with the virtual introduction and then turn it over to our chair. And this will basically just kind of give an idea of how we're doing this tonight. So here we go. Good evening and welcome to the first virtual meeting of the Boise City Historic Preservation Commission. A few things to start out with for the good of the order. Everyone from the public entering this hearing has been automatically muted and cannot speak at this time. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you will be called upon and unmuted. We will ask if you have slides to share or if you can use the planner slides for your visuals. If you have your own slides, you will be promoted to a panelist. This may log you off momentarily and then log you back in, and then you'll have the ability to share your screen. A quick overview for Zoom. The capabilities and options are different depending on which device you're using. If you're on a smartphone, you'll be limited to only speaking and sharing your camera. If you're on a computer, you can share your webcam or your screen when called upon. Some laptops might not have microphone capabilities. If you wish to speak over the phone but watch on your computer, the phone number for this hearing is listed on the email you received when registering for the hearing. For both smartphone and computer participation, there are controls on the bottom of Zoom to virtually raise your hand when you wish to speak on the item you're interested in. If you're attending on the phone with no visual capabilities, you can raise your hand virtually by typing *9. Again, that's *9 to raise your hand virtually on a phone. I'd like to call on those attending by phone tonight to see which item you're interested in speaking on. So if you're on a phone, you'll be asked to use the *9. There is a chat function in Zoom. This is part of the record, and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. If the chat function isn't available for you, you can email zoninginfo@cityofboise.org with any technical issues. Our procedures for public hearings begin with a presentation from the planning team, and then we'll go to the applicant and then the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association, followed by questions from the commission. After that, we proceed to public testimony, starting with those who signed up on the electric sign-up sheet in advance, and then anyone else who raises their hand virtually. Each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We will provide a 30-second warning and then stop you at 3 minutes. We are strict with this time as it is limited in code. Then the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for a rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate and render a decision. Tonight's agenda and proceedings will be almost the same as in-person hearings, except we might have a bit of delay as we learn with this new technology. Please be courteous and kind while we venture through this virtual format. So Madam Chair, I'll go ahead and turn things over to you now.
Thank you, Ted. We are citizen volunteers appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council. We make final decisions on projects within the city's historic districts. Any decision made tonight may be appealed to the city council, provided that the appeal is filed within 10 days of this hearing. In order to file an appeal, you must have given written or oral testimony at tonight's meeting. So that's why it's important to give your name and address when you testify tonight. We utilize a consent agenda. This means that if the applicant agrees with the staff report and if there is no public opposition, the item will be placed on the consent agenda. All items that are placed on the consent agenda are approved with one motion without further public comment. For items not on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing in the order just detailed a few minutes ago with staff, applicant, neighborhood association, and then the public testimony. Thank you all for virtually attending tonight. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Montoto.
Here.
Valderrama.
Here.
Koski.
Here.
Suarez.
Here.
Richter,
Here.
Rupp,
Here.
Maroney, Weaver,
Here.
and Shallot. So 7 present, 2 absent.
Thank you. Tonight, we will go ahead and place our minutes from the January 27th, 2020 meeting on the consent agenda. In addition to item number 1, DRH 19-00554, and that is for the ratification of findings for approval of 1708 North 27th Street. I guess we'll go ahead and call the roll or the question on the consent agenda.
Montoto.
Aye.
Valderrama,
Aye.
Koski,
Aye.
Richter,
Aye.
Rupp,
Aye.
Weaver.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. It appears that item number 2, DRH 20-00029 has been withdrawn. So we will go ahead and start with item number 3 on the agenda. And that is DRH 20-00034. This is for a certificate of appropriateness request to construct a 2-story single-family structure with a 1-story detached garage and associated site improvements at 1012 North 15th Street. We will now hear from staff.
Okay, I'll go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. Can everybody see the presentation okay?
Yep.
Line.
Yes.
Can you pause for just a minute so we can do a vote on the consent agenda?
Yes, I was just gonna say that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did we not vote?
We did, but we didn't have a move to approve and a second.
Oh,
Sorry, guys.
Nikki helped remind us.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if it's okay with you, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the previous Historic Preservation Commission hearing, as well as DRH 19-00554 for the consent agenda.
I second.
Thank you. Do we need to call the vote on that again?
Yes.
Okay. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Montoto.
Aye.
Valderrama,
Aye.
Koski,
Aye.
Richter,
Aye.
Rupp,
Aye.
and Weaver.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
okay. Thank you, Nikki, for reminding us of that. I'll go ahead and proceed. As the chair mentioned, the proposal is to construct a 2-story single-family structure and detached garage on a standard-sized internal lot in the North End Historic District. The lot is currently vacant. This aerial is an older picture. Though in order to address concerns that were originally, you did receive the original report, and the applicant has provided revised plans addressing many of those concerns. And so those are what I will cover at this time. That memo addressing those concerns and the revisions was attached to your packet. The original site plan by the applicant extended all the way to the edge of the street, which was very unusual. And so we were at that time going to require them to get a survey completed to justify the extent of that site plan, which did impact setbacks and lot coverage. But the applicant did come back with a revised site plan that generally matches what exists on the rest of the block. The revised site plan does appear to be accurate and is consistent with the rest of the block, like I said. With the revised site plan, lot coverage will be at about 37% and required setbacks will be met, except for the side loading garage appears to only have 23 feet from the property line, from this side property line. If you can you see my cursor as I move it around? So 22 feet of backup space is required, plus a 3-foot landscape buffer. And so the applicant would need to apply for a variance to reduce that buffer area to about 1 foot. The height of the structure is proposed to be about 30 feet, which is reduced from about 34 feet on the original plan. A full front porch will extend the entire length of the facade. It appears there will be a central entrance plus 2 side entrances. This is a bit unusual in the historic district. However, the commission has approved such entrances in the past on new construction. Most of the houses on the block are 1 or 1.5 stories tall. However, there is a 2-story multifamily structure almost directly across the street from this structure. So you'll see here the front facade with the porch, kind of a tri-gabled roof, which sort of breaks up the massing from the front. And then here's the side elevation and just the 1-story garage. And here are some other renderings or views of the plans. Again, the applicant reduced the peak height from 34 feet to 30 feet. And here are some photos of other houses on the block. This is in the upper left is the 2-story multifamily structure. This is a site plan that generally shows the lot coverages for that block. The previous plans before they revised where the lot coverage was anywhere from 40 to 50%. It was a really high lot coverage. And so we created this map to kind of show some of the lot coverages around the area. And you'll see that they generally range from about 20% to the 30s. Here, where my cursor is located, is the 2-story multifamily, which is at about 39% lot coverage. The applicant had, with the revised plans, requested the 37%. Staff put in a condition of approval that their lot coverage not exceed 35%, and the applicant has agreed to comply with that and would revise his plans further to reduce that lot coverage to 35%. So these are the main issues we had with the original plan and what was corrected. So as I mentioned, the site plan was corrected. Lot coverage was reduced to 37%. Massing of the structure with a proposed height, again, reduced from 34 feet. 34 feet is close to the maximum allowed for this zone, by the way. 35 feet's the height, the actual height maximum, but that's, sorry about that. That's this is to peak, however. And so they had it at 34 to the very peak, and now it's 30 feet to the peak. The garage does not meet the backup space requirements, and we discussed that. I believe the applicant indicated to me that they will seek a variance to reduce that backup space area. And with that, staff does recommend approval of the revised plans with the conditions of approval listed in the revised plans memo. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ted?
I have a question for Ted. Ted, do we have anything that would indicate the heights of the other buildings on that block, just like you had the lot coverage map there a minute ago? Do we have heights of the buildings to the north and south of it on that side of the street? Do we know?
Unfortunately, there's not a, I can easily get lot coverages from the neighbors, but I can't really readily get the exact peak height. But I would imagine that with the 2-story across the street is probably pretty close, probably, upper 20s to close to 30 at peak. But the other houses are generally 1.5 story to 1 story. And so the heights are, I would say the peak height on those are probably, 20 to 24 maybe. So this would be, a bit, quite a bit higher than those homes. It's only real match, I think, on this block would be that 2-story across the street.
Thank you. Any
Hey,
other questions
Ted,
for staff?
Sorry. Hey, Ted, can you go back to the pictures of the houses that are on the block?
So, Madam Chair, this is again the 2-story up on the left, and these are most of the other houses along that block.
And do you have pictures of the 2 houses that are adjacent to this proposal?
Yes, let's see. This blue house, which is hard to see in the bottom right, I believe is adjacent to the north. And this house, the red and yellow house, I believe is adjacent to the south, if I recall.
Yeah, Ted, can you go one more slide? I think, let's see here. And I guess go back one to the there we go. I want to look at the street view or the view of the houses, the picture of the houses next to it. I want to make sure we indicate which ones are across the street and which ones are on the same side of the street.
There is a rendering in your packet. And I can bring that up. The rendering generally, the reason I didn't put the rendering in the presentation to begin with, because it was really related to the original plans. And so it kind of had a more of a massing look than the revised would have. So it wasn't, it's not a, it doesn't look completely accurate.
Yeah, the renderings are a little bit misleading.
Yeah. Do you want me to bring those up or not? I decided they were a bit misleading, so I didn't want to present them in the
Yeah, I don't think it's worth bringing them up if it's not something we need to talk about.
No. I would like to look at the picture of the other houses though that are next to it. So that I believe is across the street. Go to the next slide.
This one is to the north. The bottom.
That one's north.
Yeah.
The green one in the upper right or yellow with the red stairs. That's further to the north.
That's on the corner, I believe. I think. Yeah.
Yep. So is there one more slide or is that there's got to be one more slide? The house right next to it is not pictured there. I think the house next to it's that dark red one, but maybe the applicant could speak to that when he's up. But I believe it's the blue one.
Yeah, I thought it was this red and yellow one, but it might be the red one here. So
that red one there, is on the other opposite end.
Mhm.
Yeah, that right there. That dark maroon one, I believe, is on the south border of that property.
Again, that's a one-story Craftsman style house. This one that's on the north side here is a kind of a cottage Queen Anne style house that was recently renovated.
Yeah, and if you, I mean, if it helps, if you go to page 39 of 92, what's inside the packet that was sent out to us, it shows a pretty good front view from, looks like Google Earth. I don't know if you have those capabilities.
There's also a pretty good shot on page 113 of the packet.
I can bring that up. Let's see. Hold on one second. Can you see the packet that I have up?
Not yet, no.
Okay. Let me stop sharing and then share this again. So it's not letting me unshare. Can you see it now?
No.
A lot? Okay.
Ted, I went ahead and unshared for you, so you can try again.
All right. How about that?
Yep.
Okay. So that's the vacant lot as it is now. This is the house to the right as you're looking from the back is the blue house to the north, and then that small red Craftsman is to the south, it looks like. So there's the yellow house is the what was there previously.
Ed,
Yeah.
do you happen to know what the height of that house was? That was the original house that was there? The yellow
Was
one?
it 30, was it 30 feet, Ted?
No,
peak?
that house wasn't likely 30 feet. It doesn't appear to be 30 feet. It was probably, I don't know, just looking at it, 22 to 24 feet at peak, maybe a little taller. And here's a rendering that one of the renderings we talked about. So this is the previous house. And then it was that red Craftsman on the side there, that on the south, that is that house there, and then again the blue one.
That's a good picture, Ted. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Ted before we hear from the applicant? Okay, doesn't sound like it. So we will now hear from the applicant.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair, and the rest of the panel. My name is Michael Webb. Can you hear me at this time?
Yes.
Perfect. So yes, first of all, thank you everyone for taking the time to hear us on this. My family and I are super excited about the opportunity to build this great house in your neighborhood and become a contributing member. The houses to the left and the right, as Ted said, approximately house or height wise, the big front of the houses are both 1 story, but they build to a 2nd story on both the north and south facing. Those houses, the peaks are approximately 24 to 25 feet on both sides of the house to try and help out with that question. Also, when we discussed the massing, initially, as Ted pointed out, we did request, I believe it was 42 or 47%. That was before I was aware of the 35% lot coverage. And since then, we backed down to find a way so that we can, come within the requirements so that we can build our house at that point in time. Another thing I wanted to point out is Ted mentioned the house directly across the street being a 2-story house, and that's the only one on the block. Directly behind the house, across the alleyway, is another 2-story house. And then the house directly behind it and to the south is additionally a 2-story house. Let me see if I can figure out how to share my screen. I'm not sure if I can to show those pictures.
Mr. Webb, if you'd like to share your screen, I can promote you so you can do that.
Okay.
You will be dropped for just a second, so hold tight.
Okay, no problem. Okay, I am back. I'm back. Sorry, video wasn't started. Let's see, there's share screen. Can everyone see my screen at this time?
I can.
Yes.
Okay. So you can see the greenhouse that's on the screen at this point in time. That is the house that is directly behind our house and one to the south. And then if I go one to the right, the blue house is the one that is directly behind the house across the alleyway from our proposed site.
Mr. Webb, do you happen to have the heights on those houses?
I do not have the heights on those houses. I do know that they are slightly taller than the house to the north and to the south of ours. An estimate, again, without having a measuring tape or walking next to them, probably in the 25 to 30 foot range.
That's helpful. Thank you. Do you have anything further, Mr. Webb?
No, ma'am, I do not have anything further at this time.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much, Mr. Webb.
Thank you.
Is there anyone representing the neighborhood association? Does not appear so. Oh, I'm seeing yes in the chat. Sherry Batazzo, are you here for Nina? Would you like to speak?
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so my name is Sherry Batazzo. I'm the Historic Preservation Commission liaison for Nina. My address is 1110 West Eastman Street. And Nina wishes to be a party of record for any items regarding massing issues, and specifically regarding this project from a 1.5 story to a 2-story for massing.
Great, thank you so much. Are there any questions from the commission?
Yeah, Ms. Patazzo, what specifically about massing? You said you wanted to be on record for 1.5 to 2-story. Are you in favor? Are you against? What exactly about massing are you going to be representing from Nina?
Are you able to hear me? Oh, great.
Yeah.
So this is my first time doing this on behalf of Nina for Mark Baltes, and discussing this project today. He had concerns about the massing on 15th with the surrounding properties not all being 2-story. He felt that the lot coverage exceeded 35%, and he'd like the lot coverage held at 35%. And just felt that the 2 stories seemed overmassed for the surrounding properties.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Great, thank you. Before we move on to the sign-up sheet, are there any questions from the commission? Okay. Let's see here. It doesn't appear we have anyone signed up, but I did see someone in the chat was wishing to testify. Krista Griesel.
Close enough. Hi there. I'm Krista Grizzle. I'm a block down on 1116 North 15th Street. Let's see. My concern is similar. It's a little bit inconsistent with the neighborhood and the size of the street presence. And then I wanted to speak in particular to the offset in the alley for the variance on the garage. We have also applied once or twice for a variance on a garage upgrade and been denied. So I just want to make sure that that inconsistency is called out. So if we have to hold to it, we would like others to hold to it as well, and also be kept to the size of the variance, or excuse me, the size of the, what do you call it? The lot coverage. So we've been held to it as well in the past. We just want to make sure that it's consistent.
Great, thank you so much, Ms. Grizzle.
Thank you.
Is there any other member of the public who did not sign up but would like to testify? Oh, sorry, I'm trying to keep up with the chat here.
Madam Chair, looks like we do have a gentleman in the attendees with their hand.
Let's start with Tom Zolga, I'm sorry. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Tom Zolga, and I own 1004 and 1006 North 15th Street, 2 houses down from this property. And my question is, because I couldn't tell from the photos or the drawings, what is the exterior of the home made of? Is it siding, shingles, stucco, brick? It just seemed like it was a flat surface. If you guys had an answer or more detail about that.
Ted, can you speak to that?
Yes, Madam Chair, I believe it was proposed to be horizontal siding on the side of the house. Fiber cement.
Mr. Zolga, does that answer your question?
Yes, and I would just, I'm for this, someone wanting to, upgrade the street, the block in a much needed part of 15th Street is fantastic. So more power to them.
Great, thank you so much for your question. And it looked like we had one other individual, Lloyd Porter. Are you here? State your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, I am. Lloyd Porter, 4843 South Maple Grove in Boise, Idaho.
Madam Chair,
yes.
Lloyd Porter with the applicant team.
Yeah, I'm with the
Okay.
applicant. I just was going to comment on the siding that it was lap siding, cementitious fiber, wood trim.
Great, thank you so much.
And then to comment on the variant on the drive, we need 25 to be compliant. We're at 23 right now. But if you look at the layout for the house with the garage, we've arched the driveway to leave a big tree and eliminate some of the hardscape of the driveway. And that's what we were hoping to propose in the variant, is that we're not going to take out that tree and not have so much concrete in the backyard at the drive. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Yeah, and if you look at your page 73 and page 74 in the packet, it shows the radius on the driveway to keep from taking out that tree.
Has everyone had a chance to reference the packet? I'm still trying to find the page.
There's a lot of pages in there.
You said page 73, is that correct?
Yes, 73 and 74.
Uh-huh. Okay, great. Thank you so much. I appreciate your comment. Is there anyone who did not sign up that would like to testify? Please virtually raise your hand if so. I'm not seeing anything, so we'll go ahead and turn back to the applicant for any rebuttal. Mr. Webb, if you or your team has anything.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you again. Lloyd helped me out with the exterior portion and also discussing the tree. So one of the big things we're trying to build with this house is preserve as much of the green space as possible. That's what we love about the neighborhood, the large trees and the green space. So we want to keep as much of that as possible while we do this. Also, another member of my team did share with me that the house directly behind us, measuring to the peak, is 29 feet. So 29 feet for the house directly behind us. And that is all I have.
Great, thank you so much. Are there any additional questions for the applicant? Okay, hearing none, we will close the hearing and render a decision. May I have a motion, please?
I'll give this a shot to provide a motion to open up discussion with the second. And I would, Madam Chair, I'd like the opportunity to start the discussion and maybe explain my motion once and if it's seconded, but I will move that DRH 20-00034, I would move to deny this application based on massing and height and width ratio from 5.2-5 in the historic guidelines.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you for the second, Commissioner Richter. Would you like to elaborate or start the discussion on that, Commissioner Koski?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. While there are some taller structures across the alley behind and one across the street, the facade that's of the biggest need to be addressed is the facade on that side of 15th Street. So the 5 buildings and 5 lots that are on the east side of the property, or excuse me, of the street on that block, 2 of which are single stories, 2 of which are 1.5 stories. And by looking at those photos like we did earlier, you'll note that the front facade of these houses are quite small. And while the 1.5-story properties have a taller roof in the back of the home, the front is quite small. And this this proposal here at a full 2 stories is a significant mass compared to the other 4 on that side of the street, and as well as 4 across the street, except for the one that's 2 stories. So that is the reason for my motion.
Thank you. Is there any additional discussion?
I'd just like to kind of mirror what Commissioner Koski has stated so far. The massing is definitely out of place for that side of the street. I think there's a lot of things that are also kind of coming up against this one, lot coverage obviously being one of them. And also the backup space for the garage. I think that needs to be taken into consideration pretty heavily. I understand that they're trying to save a tree, but I don't think they're ever going to get that 25 feet of backup space. So without having something redesigned for us to take a look at that addresses not only the massing, the lot coverage, and also the required backup space for the garage, I would have a hard time approving this application.
Thank you, Commissioner Richter. The motion before us is to deny the application. Is there any additional discussion?
I just was thinking, this is Erica, and I just would offer that based on the staff's recommendation of that the lot size wouldn't be approved unless they seem to agree to go down to a lot size of 35. Because I was too also concerned about lot size or lot coverage, but with the approval from the applicant based on the recommendations from staff, I felt a little bit more comfortable with it, but I'm still weighing that, but just offering that.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Richter.
Even with the condition of approval that the applicant is willing to take it down to a 35% lot coverage, I think our biggest issue with this one, or my biggest issue with this one, is the massing of it, and just the way it presents itself on not only the side of the street that's on, but also on that entire block right there.
I concur. I agree that the massing and the impact it would have on the block face altogether is concerning to me. But with that, let's go ahead and have the clerk call the roll on this motion to deny the application.
Montoto.
Aye.
Valderrama.
Aye.
Koski.
Aye.
Richter.
Aye.
Rupp.
Aye.
Weaver.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. The next item we have before us this evening is item number 4, DRH 20-00036. I think that's the correct amount of zeros. For a certificate of appropriateness request to demolish a non-contributing single-family structure and detached garage to construct a 1.5-story single-family structure and detached garage with accessory dwelling unit and associated site improvements. We will now, this site is located at 1015 West Rescue Street, and we will now hear from staff.
Yes, good evening, commissioners. Give me a second to share my screen. Okay, is everyone seeing it?
Yes.
Perfect. So again, we are hearing item DRH 2036 located on Residue Street. This project, again, is to demolish an existing non-contributing home, which is pictured. It's the grayish green house. It will be replaced or proposed to be replaced with a 2,622 square foot home with a 520 square foot garage and 390 square foot accessory dwelling unit located above the garage. Staff has recommended approval for this project and the applicant has agreed to all of the conditions of approval. However, we are hearing the item to discuss some concerns the commission had, so my presentation is focused to present on those points of contention. To start, this property is a substandard lot, meaning it is below the minimum lot standard for the zone. There is a substandard lot ordinance within the Boise City zoning code, so this property is being reviewed through the historic guidelines as well as the substandard lot ordinance. However, one key element of the ordinance is that the Historic Preservation Commission may modify regulations within the ordinance during the certificate of appropriateness process. If a design is found appropriate for the historic district, but it doesn't necessarily fully comply with the substandard lot ordinance, the commission may still approve the design with no waivers or variances needed. The first point of contention was the setbacks. The proposed front setback is below the zone requirement for the 15 feet and the substandard lot ordinance minimum, which is 5 feet of the average of the front yard setbacks of adjoining properties. So there was a condition of approval added to meet the front setback by relocating the building to between 14 feet 10 inches and 20 feet, which is within that 5-foot average. The applicant has agreed to comply and the new design will meet all front setback standards. There were also some initial issues with the side setbacks with a chimney and minor living space bump out that didn't meet the 5-foot setback. The applicant has agreed to the attached condition that they meet the setback and they illustrated compliance with the modified design seen here. So they have removed the chimney as well as part of a living space bump out that was attached to the chimney. Lot coverage for the property was initially proposed at 36.6%, with staff adding a condition that the project be at or below the 35% standard. The applicant worked with staff and a new design was proposed, which reduced the garage square footage by 60 square feet. So the new design is the one on the bottom. You can see that this bump out was removed from the garage. Staff felt that the effort of the applicant brought the design to an agreeable lot coverage of 35.16%. A memo was provided to the commission recommending altering the condition to allow the additional 0.16%. The front elevation on the left is the facade submitted with the application. It included a modern front dormer with the solid windows. Lacked material variation. It had some inappropriate materials like hardboard and visible Fibrex windows. The applicant has modified the elevation, which you can see on the right. They changed the dormer window. They added some sandstone to add some design variety. They also changed the materials. They're now using fiber cement and fiberglass windows. While the project largely followed the substandard lot ordinance, the project modified the requirements in two main areas, the height and residential floor area. The substandard lot ordinance looks at context to determine appropriate height and has specific dimensions to classify design as 1 1/2 story and a partial 2-story. The proposed design deviates from the dimensional requirements by having a midline of the roof being at 19 feet instead of the standard 18 feet. They also have 2 dormers instead of 1 for the traditional partial 2-story, and the dormers are at 12 feet instead of standard 8 feet. So it doesn't comply within the specific dimensions of the partial 2-story or 1 1/2. However, as noted, the Historic Preservation Commission has the ability to modify regulations of the substandard lot ordinance. The intent of the height standards is to create a design that complements the massing of the neighborhood and doesn't stand out in a negative way. With a side gable, the dormers face into the street and the rear yard, alleviating privacy concerns that could have been caused by the additional dormer in larger size. Additionally, the proposed height and design allows for a transition from the full 2-story on one side to the single story on the other, providing additional design variety to the street. As such, staff finds the design to meet the intent of both the historic and substandard law ordinance. Finally, the residential floor area is 72%, which is above the 55% residential floor area required in the substandard law ordinance. Again, the intent of the requirement is to design appropriate infill. The massing is still appropriate for the context of the property and a significant amount of the residential floor area is located within an underground basement that does not impact the massing or lot coverage of the site. If I was to just calculate the visible floor area, so taking out the basement, the residential floor area would be about 48%. Now, this is a lot of text, and don't feel obligated to read it. This is just to show the main project-specific conditions that the applicant has agreed to comply with or has actually provided revised drawings. It's just included in case these are a point of discussion. And again, staff recommends approval for the project, and I am more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Casey?
Madam Chair, I have one.
Oh, sure.
Quick question. Casey, does the substandard residential floor plan percentage, the 55%, I think is what you said, does that distinguish if there is a basement, or is it just any kind of floor area there is in the house, no matter if it's above ground or underground?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Weaver, how it's written is just flat out residential floor area. So we also count the accessory dwelling unit square footage towards that. The design review committee, which reviews substandard lots that are in historic district, has kind of allowed some waivers or deviation if some of the square footage is in the basement. But as it's written, the 55% is just overall living space.
Thank you.
And there was one other question, I think, for Casey.
Yes, Madam Chair, and Casey, this is Commissioner Koski. A question for you is on the overall height of the building and the dormer width that's proposed. Would that classify this house now as a 2-story home instead of a 1.5 stories?
Yeah, so Madam Chair, Commissioner Koski, it gets difficult when they're not specifically following the dimensional requirements. So typically when we see designs that are close to the dimensional standards, so 1 foot off of the midline, we typically call it a non-compliant, more of a partial 2-story. I wouldn't describe this as a full 2-story, as a good portion or all of the second story is within the pitch line of the roof, which is kind of the point of what a 1.5 and partial 2-story is you don't have the full second floor, rather it's located in the roof. So it's however you want to define it. I would call it a non-compliant 1.5 or partial 2-story.
Okay, and is the height limit for a 1.5 story at 25 foot? Is that correct?
So there's a few different dimensions for that. So we look at height at the midline. So really the restriction for a midline for 1.5 or partial 2-story is that 18 feet. So it doesn't measure, have a requirement for the peak. Typically when we see them complying with the 1.5 18-foot midline, we're seeing homes that are 22 to 24 feet to the peak. The maximum peak height in the substandard lot is the width of the lot. So if it's a standard 25-foot lot, that would be the max peak. This lot is, I believe it's 30 or 35. I believe it's 35. So per the substandard lot, the max peak would be 35 feet, which you can't get complying with the midline roof height, but that's the standard we would look at. It's a lot of numbers.
Okay. And does the ADU unit in the back fall under those same criteria? Would that be now considered, would that be a 1.5 stories, I guess, or would that be a 2-story?
So again, we're looking at the non-compliance on 1.5. So it's more of a 1.5 versus a partial 2-story, but it's following the same midline of the proposed home. So they would be however you define them based off of that. I would not, per how we've interpreted the code, call it a full 2-story. It would be a non-compliant partial 2-story.
Thank you, Casey. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions for Casey? Okay, seeing none, we will now hear from the applicant.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so my name is Michael Belt. I'm the architect of record. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, thank you for your time. You know, I really wasn't aware of the 18-foot midline thing, so that one's caught me off a little bit. But I would say overall, the project is really a massive improvement in the neighborhood, considering what's there now. I would also say that overall, the historic design guidelines that are kind of laid out, we definitely meet the intent of and respect with kind of what you guys hope to achieve in the neighborhood. And that's really all I'd have to say. I would say that if it sounds like the big thing is maybe that the roof is maybe a foot too high. I think if that's kind of the sticky issue here, we could definitely find a way to get that down a foot. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Belt. Are there any questions from the commission?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Mr. Belt, Noah Richter here. Would there be any way to reduce the overall width of the dormers on the structure?
You know, I think we could give it a shot. I would say that if again, this is something that everybody feels really strongly about. So we have these at 12. And if I heard correctly, they need to be 10 or less. Is that correct, Casey?
Yeah, so partial 2-story would be a 10-foot wide dormer.
Okay, so I would say yes, we could make that happen. We could take 2 feet out of those. And the other thing I want to point out is you know, the design style that we have here is kind of this traditional Craftsman Bungalow, and I think when you're kind of looking at that front dormer, you know, it's important to sort of realize and understand that dormer is set back from the front porch, and so we do have kind of a nice, easy single story that's building up to this dormer. Same on the backside too, and the other thing is, I believe I've got this drawn to meet the 1.5-story requirement with the exception of that 18-foot midline number. But as I remember correctly, the substandard rules were that the upper level that is in this attic space is to have sort of a knee wall that is no taller than 2.5 feet, which is what we have. So I thought I'd just add that too.
Thank you, Mr. Belt. Are there any additional questions from the commission? Okay, it does not appear so. Thank you very much for your time. Is there anyone here tonight representing the neighborhood association? Sherry, the floor is yours. If you could state your name and address for the record one more time.
Yes, Sherry Battazzo for Nina, 1110 West Eastman. Nina wishes to be a party of record for all items regarding height and lot coverage. Prefer to keep lot coverage at 35%, but generally agree with staff's recommendations for the project.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Sherry on behalf of Nina? Okay, thank you, Sherry. Are there any questions from the commission before we move to public testimony? No? Okay. It doesn't appear that we have anyone signed up to testify, but is there anyone here wishing to? If so, please virtually raise your hand. You can press *9 to do that. Okay, I'm not seeing anything on my end. So with that, we can return to the applicant. Mr. Belt, if you have anything for rebuttal, now would be the time. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, it doesn't appear that we have any rebuttal from the applicant. I'm not sure what the protocol is or how long we should wait.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, I can.
Sorry. Yeah, I would say, so the last comment from the person from Nina, that the percentage coverage, I know we're basically 0.16% over. I'd like to think that we really have met the design intent there. And I guess I would say that if in fact, one of the requests that you have is that these dormers get narrowed up by the 2 feet, we would definitely be in compliance with that percentage. That's all I have.
Great. Are there any final questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair, Mr. Belt, is it possible for you to reduce that lot coverage to 35%?
Yes, it will be. I mean, we're 0.16% away. So yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, I have a question for Mr. Belt.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Koski.
We're talking about some design changes. I know that can be difficult when you talk about, pulling a foot off the height, quite possibly, or changing the dormers in size. I also think the dormers on the ADU might also be above the size of the 10 feet, if I recall. But my main question for you would be are you able to reduce those size to the size that's called for in the guidelines without doing a complete redesign? I mean, obviously our goal would be, to get these projects going without delaying it any further. So could you confidently say that you can redesign that without starting from scratch?
We would not have to start from scratch. Just kind of glancing through the drawings here, what actually would be nice is if so the house has 2 12-foot wide dormers, front and back. The garage has 2 11-foot wide dormers. What would be nice is if the house, we can make it work, I would say, if we can just reduce the width of the house dormers to 11 foot. Knowing I gotta take 2 feet out, it would require a good bit of redesign. And so I guess what I would say is if we could definitely make the house dormers 11 feet wide, we'd like to keep the garage dormers at their current width of 11 feet wide.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions for Mr. Belt? Okay, great. With that, we will close the hearing and render a decision. May I have a motion, please, or discussion first, if that is easier?
I'd like to discuss a little.
Sure.
I feel like the project looks pretty good, but I mean, there's just a couple of small little things that are in the rules that aren't being followed. And I mean, what's the point of these if we can just say, oh, we can just skip these 3 steps and get the house through? Like, why do we even write the rule? So I think if the house is redesigned to fix the dormers and the height, I would be good with it. It looks good, but I mean, it's not in the rules and it's violating several of them. Not just like one. That's just my thoughts.
Thank you for your comments. Is there any additional discussion before we have a motion?
I guess, Madam Chair, I just want to mention one thing here. Some of the things I'm thinking about, I think that I'm not concerned about the lot coverage being a little bit over 35%, that is a guideline. It's not an absolute. And I think 35.16% meets the intent of guideline. And I would be fine with that without, and it's also, measurements are not that accurate. If you're taking in consideration any kind of material that's on the outside of the building, it might actually, if you were to go all the way around the outside, it might be even more or less by the time it's built. I just think that's so tiny. But the height of the house, we have to kind of consider the massing and what it looks like. And I think right now it looks pretty proportional with the height being a foot or two above the top of the dormers. And as we start fiddling around with some of these things, it's going to put it into a little bit more obscure massing look. So I guess I'd be fine with the height as it is in relation to the dormers, but it would be nice to have the dormers narrower, whether that's getting down to the 10 feet, which it should be at. That's probably ideal. 11 feet, I could hear someone's argument for that, I guess. But anyways, I'm a little more concerned about the width of the dormer and than the height of the house.
Thank you, Commissioner Weaver.
Madam Chair, I think Commissioner Weaver is spot on with the lot coverage stuff. I mean, 0.16% over, once the building's built, is it going to be less? Is it going to be more? There's, that's a pretty small amount to be arguing over at this point right now. And as far as the height goes, I think she's spot on with that too. We start lowering that peak height, the dormers are going to get, crowding the peak of the main home. I do believe that if we can shrink them down to 10 feet so they follow within that guideline, I think that would be a good direction to go.
Thank you. I concur with the width reduction on the dormers for 10 feet. Are there any additional questions, comments, or a motion perhaps?
Madam Chair, just some additional discussion. As Commissioner Weaver and Richter spoke about the height and the lot coverage, I'm in agreement of their comments. Where I get concerned on projects like this that we need to take a look at together as a commission is when everything seems to be maxed out. So initially the proposal was too close to the front setback. It was too close to the street. It was too close to the side setback. It goes over above the guideline size for 1.5 stories. The dormers are too large. The residential coverage is 72% versus 55. If when we look at these types of proposals, if one or two of those things come up, it's a little easier to be addressed, in my opinion. But when you're maxing or even going over a little bit on all of those different levels, then I really question, does it meet the intent of the guidelines to fit the property? There's a very small 1-story house next to the ADU on the the west side, and another 1-story house in front of that on the west side of the house that has a little taller roof. So I really think we need to consider all of these things as we're doing right now. So that's just my biggest concern for projects like this. If the dormers are reduced to 10 feet, I would be likely to approve it based on the other conditions, but I'd also like to see that reduced in the ADU as well to match the house. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Commissioner Koski. I appreciate your concerns. And I do want to say on the record that I also appreciate the concerns of the applicant. I'm sorry, the fact that the applicant has addressed the concerns in the reductions and changes that they've made within the application so far, and they seem to be willing to work with staff and us on this particular application. So I'm grateful for that. With that, may I have a motion?
But before we do, I'd like to say one more thing.
Sure.
I just want to say that I agreed with Commissioner Koski. I thought he said what I was trying to say better.
Fantastic. Thank you. Do we have a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve DRH 20-00036 with the additional condition of approval that all dormers on main residence and garage shall not exceed 10 feet.
Do I have a second?
I will second that.
Great. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Montoto.
Aye.
Valderrama.
Aye.
Koski.
Aye.
Richter.
Aye.
Rupp.
Aye.
And Weaver.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you very much. The next item we have on our agenda for tonight is item number 5, DRH 20-00059. This is a certificate of appropriateness request to construct a 2-story single-family structure with attached garage and associated site improvements. The site is located at 2100 North 17th Street. And we will now hear from staff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will share my screen now. Okay. As was indicated, the request is to construct a 2-story single-family structure with attached garage on a substandard lot. Pardon? Can everybody see my screen? Okay.
Yes, I can see it.
I can see it.
Okay. It's a request for a 2-story single-family structure with attached garage on a substandard corner lot located in the expanded North End Historic District. The overall lot contains the overall existing lot as you're looking at this lot here. If you can see my cursor, the lot, at least there are underlying lots of record here, and the applicant is proposing to bring one of those forward and to do a lot line adjustment to create a second lot facing 17th Street. So the lot line will generally run down the middle of this lot, essentially cutting off alley access, which we'll discuss later, and then we'll orient the house towards 17th Street. It'll be a fairly large fronting lot as well off of 17th Street. So the existing lot does contain, this is a minimal traditional contributing home and garage on this southeast corner. And so that's kind of what the conditions are now, and then what the applicant is proposing to do with bringing up that underlying lot. As previously stated, the new lot will front 17th Street and take access directly from the street to an attached garage located on the north side of the house. Lot coverage for the project will be 32%, and required setbacks will be largely met. However, it appears there will be an uncovered deck along the south street side of the house that is encroaching into the setback. So that the street side setback will need to be met, or a variance approved, or the deck adjusted to meet that setback. This is the front 17th Street facing elevation of the house. As you can see, you got a description from the last application of the substandard lot ordinance. This applicant is requesting a full 2-story on this lot. The house has been modulated a bit with varied roof lines and broken up a bit. There is actually a 2-story house across the street to the south of this. I think it's a multifamily structure. However, to the north is I'll show you a photo of it, but to the north is a multifamily building, mid-century multifamily building that is technically 2 stories, but it's sort of a sunken 2 stories, so it doesn't come across really as 2 stories. I'll show you a photo of that. So this is the front facade with a partial front porch. multiple front-facing gables. This is the attached garage on the north side. It will be stepped back from the front and curb gutter and sidewalk installed along that street frontage. Again, with the separating of the existing lot, the alley access was essentially blocked off. It should be noted that the applicant does, I believe, still own the entire property too. So no, I believe they'll continue to own the contributing property to the east. These are the side elevations. This is up here is the left interior side elevation, and on the bottom right, you'll see the street side elevation. Again, they are proposing a deck in that area, which will be problematic with the setbacks. And then a large dormer on the side, and also entry doors on the side as well. These are houses in the neighborhood. This on the upper right is the two-story that is south. And this is a house to the west. And you can see some of these. There's some partial two-story or story and a half looking west. This is looking south. So on the upper left here, you'll see that the two-story. So down here on the bottom is that multifamily and mid-century multifamily building, obviously non-contributing. So this is adjacent to the north. So to the south, you do have a two-story. To the north, you have a, I guess I'm not sure what you'd call it, a partial two-story or story and a half multifamily structure. And then directly behind, again, is the small one-story minimal traditional home that the applicant owns. I'm sorry. So we are recommending approval of the application. I will make a note on the height. This is in a floodplain. So the property, the structure is required to be elevated 1 foot above base flood level. So that contributes to the height. The height of the structure at peak is again 30 feet. And 1 foot of that is due to the flood, the elevation due to the floodplain. So, and with that, I'll stand for questions.
Ted, I do have a question, and it might be one for the applicant, but there appears to be a large mature tree on the site. And is that going to be affected at all by the plans?
That I'm not sure. I'll have that the applicant will have to respond to that.
Okay, great. That's what I assumed.
Sure.
Thank you.
Hey Ted, as the lot sits right now, is it a substandard lot currently, or no?
No, currently it would be. Let me go back to the aerial. Currently it is a. It would be a standard size corner lot.
So if he does split the lot, then it would be considered a substandard lot.
Right.
So wouldn't this?
Excuse me, Madam Chair, Commissioner Richter. Right now, there's, I believe there are 3 underlying lots of record beneath this lot. So as you're looking at the aerial, you see 1 lot. There's actually 3 lots there, and that's, we've talked about this before in our meetings that they're substandard original lots of record that were platted 100 years ago. And so we still honor those. And so when we look at these lots, we go, okay, it looks like a large lot, but there's actually 3 lots there. Whoever owns that lot has the ability and really the right to bring up one of those lot lines, one of the 3, and create a separate lot. However, in this case, they did that and then they adjusted it to run north-south, creating that lot to the new, essentially the new lot to the west.
So with that lot line adjustment and that new lot being created, the new lot that is created, would that be a standard lot or a substandard lot?
Substandard lot, right, substandard lot.
So wouldn't this application fall under all of the substandard lot guidelines?
It would. It does fall under the substandard lot guidelines. As Casey mentioned, the Historic Commission has the ability to override those guidelines if they see fit, if they think that the project is a good project and works. In this case, it would somewhat comply. Again, this house down here is 2 stories. This multifamily to the north is, kind of a sunken 2-story, I guess. It's a fairly low building, but has 2 levels to it. And then this would be the house behind them, which they own, would be the contributing minimal traditional house.
And those other houses that are 2 stories, are they on substandard lots as well?
Likely, yes. A lot of these lots along here are on substandard lots. I did not check that though, so I don't have that up. But some of the north end lots, as you drive around, you'll see 2-story or 1.5-story or partial 2-story houses on maybe a 40-foot wide lot or 45-foot wide lot, which would be considered substandard. This lot that the multifamily project is on is a standard size lot. The property to the south, where the 2-story is here, is a substandard lot. This across the street would be a substandard, and then a standard here. So it's kind of a mix throughout the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Madam Chair and Ted, we've got another question. Has the proposed lot change, is that still proposed, or is it with the planning department, or is it approved? What's the status on that?
I believe the applicant is in process with the lot line adjustment. Last time I checked with the planner working on that application, he said that there was still some finalizing they had to do to finalize the lot line adjustment. So it's not completed yet.
Okay.
It could be by now, but it wasn't, well, a month ago, I guess.
I have a follow-up question to that then. Is it somewhere written, or do we have some sort of guideline that when breaking up these lots that alley access is required? Or can you comment on that? I'm not sure if I'm stating it correctly, but
yeah,
I guess I thought alley access was part of that equation.
Oh, that is correct. Actually, city code requires access to an alley when available. If an alley is available, access has to be taken from that alley. And in this case, the way the lot was split or divided when the substandard lot line was brought up, it effectively cut off that, access from the back to providing access from here. So front loading access was then proposed.
Okay, and then as far as the front loading access, that also is not something desired, correct?
Yeah, it's not typical of the historic districts for sure. And like I said, when an alley is available, we would not allow it. It's just the circumstances of how they're splitting the lot. You know, the lot lines naturally run east to west. So you're not able to bring up another lot line here, or you're interfering with these structures already. So that's why they moved the lot line to go north-south. There are a couple of other houses along here that you can see do front load. They have front loading accessibility as well as rear loading. So that you'll see that throughout the north end as well. Well, there will be an alley, and there is access from an alley, but at some point in history, front access was put in and a curb cut put in. Right now, there is no curb, gutter, and sidewalk on this property, so a condition of approval would be to install that.
Okay, and then one more question, Madam Chair and Ted. The attached garage, it's my understanding that that is also not something recommended in the guidelines. Is that correct?
Correct, yes. So a front-loading garage, is not something desirable if it can be done in another way. Let me go to the site plan. So they have set it back from the facade about 10 feet. So we did ask that so that it doesn't, so the garage, one thing, if somebody does need to do a garage in this situation, we don't want it to dominate the facade of the property. So we do require it to be set back. So they did do that. But it is something that is not common in the North End Historic District. You'll see it more like on Warm Springs. You'll see a lot of maybe front-loaded garages because they don't have alley access in those areas. So it's not unheard of in historic areas, but it's less common, I would say.
Ted and Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any final questions for Ted before we hear from the applicant? Okay, great. We will now hear from the applicant.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay. I think Amy's going to do all two of them, right?
Yeah, I believe first you should have Amy Algeier, the architect.
Great. Hi, Amy. If you could state your name and address for the record.
Okay, my name is Amy Algeier. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, and I live at 948 East Monarch Street in Eagle. So Pippa and Brian, I'm going to let you kind of field the questions about the lot split because I was not involved with that process and you have such a better understanding of what all went down there. I would like to go through the historic issues first and then let Pippa and Brian address the lot split issues, if that's okay.
Fantastic.
Okay. So this application is for a new home on a newly subdivided lot, which Ted sort of explained pretty well. Existing contributing home on the east end of the property along the alleys being sort of carved away as a separate property. With regards to the conditions of approval, I just want to verify that the owners are in agreement with them, including that front window change. We are planning to reduce the height of that deck that's in the setback so that it will be under 12 inches and it will no longer be a problem. Also, to address the question about the existing tree, it is our intention to save that. You can see it drawn in on the site plan. There's quite a large circle. It's just to the right of the driveway, which is, there's an existing driveway there now, so that hopefully the roots won't be too impacted by that drive. Now this design proposes a street-facing garage, which isn't typically encouraged in the historic district. Despite that, they're not exactly rare. There are 5 street-facing garages on this block. So 5 out of the 11 homes on this block have garages that face and take access from the front street. The existing home on the lot, the contributing home we were talking about, actually takes its access from 17th Street and it has a front-facing garage door. So there is some precedent on this lot to have a front-facing garage. And we are actually proposing to use part of that same curb cut to access the new garage itself. Now, as Ted mentioned, the proposed garage is set well back from the front of the house. It's 10 feet, 10 inches back. We placed it 26 feet from the front property line, which is 6 feet further than is required by code, to try to minimize the impact it has from the front. The garage, excuse me, was also placed along the interior property line to help buffer it from public view. It's sort of hidden on 3 sides, being placed on that northern side. The structure that's adjacent to the proposed garage, that multifamily apartment building, it has no windows on that facade, so it's not looking into the side of the garage. This lot is not large enough to have a freestanding garage, nor is it deep enough for the garage to sit behind the house. So the only option for a non-front facing garage would be to set it on the south side of the house and take access from Dora. This option, though, would make the garage visible from both rights of way. It would reduce the buildable lot width by 5 feet, and it would put all of the nice southern sun exposure into the garage instead of into the house. And that's kind of a concern for the owners. Now, those trade-offs are steep and they're not beneficial to either the owners or to the neighborhood. And for those reasons, we felt the best location for the garage is where we've placed it. Again, almost half the properties on this block have front-facing garages. So in kind of a strange way, this will actually help make this new design harmonious with the neighborhood. Now, the height of the house was a bit of a challenge. As Ted said, this site sits in the alluvial flood zone, which means we can't have a basement and we're limited on how low the main floor can be. The way those regulations read, though, they say the first floor of the structure has to be located a minimum of 12 inches above the existing grade. They consider the crawl space the first floor of the structure. So we have to locate the base of the crawl space 12 inches above the existing grade. We have 18 inches for the crawl space. We have roughly a foot of floor structure. When we add all that together, it puts the floor level of the main level 3.5 feet above the existing grade. And that's quite a bit more than the 12 to 18 inches that we normally see. So those are FEMA regulations, and there's no variance available to us for those. It's simply a hardship of the site, and any home that's built here is going to have to meet those same limitations. Because we can't create space in the basement, all the living space has to be on the main or upper levels. This is a small lot, and being on a corner, it's eaten up with setbacks. With a garage on the site, the most square footage we can get on a single level is about 1,280 to 1,300 square feet, which is well below the median size of a single family home. By adding a partial second floor, we're able to get more usable space, and we can create a house large enough for a family with 2 or 3 kids. Now, the historic guidelines allow for a 2-story home to be built if the adjacent properties are also 2 stories. The structure to the north is a 2-story multifamily apartment building. As Ted noted, it's sort of sunken into the ground a little bit, so it's not very tall, but it is 2 stories. To the south, across Doris Street, is a 2-story single-family home. So this proposed home will have 2-story structures on either side. Design-wise, instead of using full second-floor walls, we've designed the house to have a 1.5-story look. We're using low pony walls with dormers in the second floor. In addition, we've stepped the massing down at the front with a low front porch and a smaller gable that has a lower bearing height. And at the back, we're providing a main level pergola to try to reduce the height of that back wall. The massing also drops down along that interior north property line where it sits adjacent to the lower 2-story apartment building, the garage bearing several feet lower than the main house, which reduces the mass of the house at that side. And along the south elevation, we've wrapped a lower floor eave along the entire length of the wall to break up that wall and to break up the massing. For this project, we have met all the required setbacks and the parking requirements. We're below the 35% lot coverage limit at 32.3%. We are well below the 55% substandard lot limit at just 47.2%. We have provided 24% more open space than is required, and the peak of the house is 4 feet below the height limitation for this zone. We've done all of this while meeting FEMA's pretty stringent height requirements for new construction in the flood zone. Commissioner Koski earlier expressed concern about projects that pushed or exceeded all the boundaries at the same time, and in this situation, we're not exceeding any of those limitations. We feel that we've proposed a historically harmonious home with a lot of character and quality materials. We've met the requirements of the zone and a great number of the historic guidelines, and historic staff has recommended approval. For these reasons, we feel this home would be an asset to the neighborhood. And I'm happy now to answer any questions you may have for me, and then let Pippa and Brian answer any questions that you have about the lot split itself.
Thank you, Amy. Are there any questions?
Madam Chair, I have one quick question.
Sure, Commissioner Weaver.
So do you not have an issue, a setback issue with the deck on the south side of the house?
We're just going to reduce the height of that deck. Any deck that's no higher than 12 inches can extend into that setback. So it would no longer be an issue if we reduce the height.
Okay.
And thank you, Amy, for addressing my question about the tree. I appreciate that very much. Are there any additional questions for Amy before we hear from Brian and Pippa? Okay, it doesn't sound like it. So Brian and Pippa, whenever you're ready, please state your name and address for the record.
Do you want them to make a presentation, or did you just want them to answer questions that you had?
Whatever they prefer. If they don't have anything to present, we'll just have them state their name and address for the record, and then we can ask questions.
Okay.
Hi, Madam Chairman and Board. This is Brian Balo of 130 West Crestline Drive, 40372, and
Pippa Balo, same address.
We'd be happy to answer any questions and also give just a little explanation. Very quickly, we requested this, I guess this is a better word for it, but a lot split or a division of the 3 existing city lots that are there so that we could build single family house. As you look at the pictures, maybe from the corner of Dora and 17th, you'll see a big kind of wide open space. We really like the older historic contributing existing house. It's on the extreme bottom left or bottom right corner on the alley. And would like to keep it. And in fact, perhaps after, working on this, kind of coming back and doing more plans with that. The city has agreed to our lot split and asked for, before we put a carport or parking for the existing house off of the alley, they wanted to see these plans for what we would do lot, the newly created lot, I guess is the way I would put that. So it is our intention to have alley parking for the existing historic house and also to leave all of the historic house there. And the garage, which is part of the structure which isn't historic, we would like to keep as much of that as possible as well. And we felt like, this design would accomplish that without impeding access to the alley for the folks that live in that existing contributing house. And
Thank you.
That's all we have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the Balos?
Madam Chair, I have a question and regarding the, unless I missed it, regarding the lot subdivision that you're going through the process. Was there any conversation about alley access to the new lot?
Yes. One of the, I guess, contingencies, so the lot line adjustment was approved, but there was a question about access for parking for the new lot that would be created. It was asked that would come off of alley, going across where we'd like to put a carport and parking off of the alley for the existing.
So there wasn't, you feel that they, I guess I didn't understand. Maybe I need to state my question differently. Are they requiring alley access to the new lot?
When last we met with them, the decision was to meet with the historic committee, and pending approval from the plan that we were submitting, that we could continue to use the existing driveway, the existing curb cut on the newly created lot from the lot line adjustment, and have the old house access its parking from the alley.
So the contributing house right now does not have alley access. It's using that driveway from 17th Street.
Great, thank you.
Are there any additional questions for the Balos? Okay, I'm not hearing or seeing anything. So thank you very much. Sherry Battazzo from Nina, are you still here?
Yes.
Do you have anything to say on behalf of Nina?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Nina wishes to be a party of record in support of this project with staff's conditions for approval.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the commission before we move forward to the sign up sheet? No? Okay. We do have one individual signed up to testify. Aaron Logan, are you here? It doesn't appear that Aaron is here. Is there anyone else?
Madam Chair, it took me a minute to find them. I did unmute them.
Oh, great. Aaron, are you here? Yes. Oh, fantastic. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
It's Aaron Logan, and it's 2116 North 17th. And I think the house design looks like it would be perfect for the neighborhood. I was looking for the landscape plan, and there doesn't seem to be one. And I thought for new construction, you needed to present a landscape plan. I am concerned that, we need more trees. And I think the application said they were taking down the evergreen, but keeping the willow. I mean, it's just unclear to me how the tree and the sidewalk and the deck and the sidewalk is how all of that is gonna come together. So that was my comment.
Thank you very much. Hopefully the applicant can address that when they come forward for their rebuttal. Is there anyone who did not sign up but would like to testify? Please virtually raise your hand. Okay. Not seeing anything on my end. So we will return to the applicant for rebuttal. And if you could address the questions about the trees once again.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
So it was our intention to remove those evergreens that are along Dora Street. If it's a point of contention, we can talk to the Balos about keeping them. Because the lot is small, we're trying to make as much outdoor living space as we can for their backyard. And that was one reason we were taking those trees out. The big tree in the front, we would love to keep. It may take some creativity on the part of the sidewalk location to locate a sidewalk that doesn't require the removal of that tree. That tree sits about, the center line of that tree sits about 1'7" off the front property line. So at that point, the sidewalk would have to veer toward the street. And you know, it would be sad to lose that tree for the sidewalk. Sidewalks, they don't have deep footing, so if we could just get it away from the tree, I think we could probably save it. But regardless of whether this house or another house goes in, if sidewalk is required, that tree is going to be an issue with any sidewalk.
Great, thank you so much. Did you have anything further?
I don't. Landscape plan. We've never had to provide a landscape plan for historic submittal. We don't generally have the landscape worked out at the point where we don't even have construction documents at this point. So it's not something we've been asked for before. If the city would like to see something schematic, I'm sure we could put something together, but it's most likely going to change as the owners start to really think about outdoor spaces and how they're going to use them.
Thank you for addressing that. Are there any additional questions for Amy or for the Baylows at this time? Okay, I'm seeing and hearing none. So thank you very much. And with that, we will close the hearing and render a decision. May I have a motion, please, or discussion?
Madam Chair and fellow commissioners, this is a challenging site and a challenging design. And I have to say that I had a lot of questions going into this, and Amy addressed them very well, and I thought she did a fantastic job at putting together a design that stays within the guidelines, but also is complementary to the neighborhood. The front loading of the garage is interesting, but if on that same block across the street, there's two more doing the same thing. So I think this will be a great addition to the neighborhood. And with that, I would like to move that DRH 20-00059, I move for approval based on the conditions that's been applied.
Second.
I will second.
Oh, we have 2 seconds.
Oh, either one of us.
I think Commissioner Weaver was first in her second. Is there any discussion before we have the clerk call the roll? Okay, I'm not hearing any. So will the clerk please call the roll?
Montoto. Montoto.
Aye.
Valderrama.
Aye.
Koski.
Aye.
Richter.
Aye.
Rupp.
Aye.
And Weaver. Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. The next item before us this evening is item number 6, DRH 20-00065. This is a certificate of appropriateness request to construct a 2-story single-family structure and detached garage and associated site improvements. The project is located at 1716 North 20th Street, and we will now hear from staff.
Ted, you're on mute.
Oh, wait a minute. Sorry about that.
There we go. We can hear you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. As you mentioned, the request is for a 2-story single-family structure with detached garage on a large corner lot in the expanded North End Historic District. As you can see, the lot is vacant currently. Previously, a couple of years ago, there was a ranch-style house demolished in 2017. And some of the commissioners might remember this lot. At the time, We just talked about the underlying lots of record on the previous application. This lot has a couple of underlying lots of record that an applicant had proposed to bring forward and to adjust and to put two substandard, to create two substandard lots here. And those were actually approved. So we had two 1.5 story substandard or two 1.5 story structures that were approved with detached garages and accessory dwelling units. That project never came through. So here we are with this project on the property, which is proposing one fairly large single family house, and again on a standard size lot. The new house will be oriented towards 20th Street with the garage taking access from the rear alley to the east. Lot coverage will be at 33%, which is below the 35% recommended in the guidelines. And on this project, all the required required setbacks are proposed to be met. And you can see the site plan here as 20th Street is here where it will front, and it is a corner lot. And the garage will take side access off of the street to the north, but it will take access from the alley. As you can see from this elevation, the house will be 2 stories with 3 front-facing gables. It will be a large house for the neighborhood, which is largely 1 story and 1.5 story houses, mostly in this area. However, the architecture does include quite a bit of modulation that breaks up the massing, including the use of the dormers and the shorter second level walls, in addition to this being a very large lot for the north end. And as you can see, the side elevation here, the house does include some of that modulation, breaking up the massing on the side and decreasing the massing as it goes towards the rear of the property. This is the proposed garage and shop. And it is proposed to be 1 story and 1.5 story in some sections. And these are some photos supplied by the applicant. So property to the west, you'll see some 1.5 story homes. The property adjacent to the south is in your upper right-hand picture, is a non-contributing, was a non-contributing single level structure that the Historic Commission approved for demolition a couple of months ago, and it is being reconstructed with a 1.5 story house. And then the property to the north on your lower left across the street, 1 story, and the property to the east as well, 1 story. And this is the view along the alley. So this is not a substandard lot, and it doesn't have to comply with, isn't required to comply with the substandard lot ordinances. However, the commission needs to consider still the size of the house in relation to the neighborhood. Staff is recommending approval of the application due to partly in the size of the lot and putting a single family house on this large lot, and that the fact that the applicant did work to break up the massing on both the front and street side elevations and then decrease that massing going down towards the rear of the property. So as I mentioned, staff does recommend approval of the application with the recommended conditions of approval in the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Are there any questions for staff? Not hearing or seeing any.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I have a quick question. Ted, so you, staff doesn't have any concerns with how the garage is accessed, I guess, off the street, not directly off the alley?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Weaver, the garage will be accessed off the alley. It'll be a side loading garage. So there's not going to be a curb cut here. It'll just be, so the vehicles will come in on the alley and then load from the side, from the north.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair and Ted, you mentioned maybe review with me again where if there are other two-story houses nearby or around it.
As far as I know, there aren't any other full two-story houses, which is what this is, in the immediate area. There might be some on the, within the block area or across the alley or something like that. But generally, when we're looking at massing, we're looking at the houses adjacent and the houses along the same block front. The applicant on the first application you heard tonight mentioned 2 stories across the alley and on the other side of the block, and that's fine to give examples of that. But, when we're reviewing these, we really should just be looking at what the surrounding context is. And immediately in this area, there aren't any, as far as I know, that I have seen full two-story structures. And again, I explained the reasons that we decided to go ahead and recommend approval was it is a corner lot, a very large corner lot, which does require increased setbacks off of the street, mitigating some of that massing, and then the modulation breakup of the building.
Madam Chair, Ted, thank you.
Madam Chair, Ted, the house that we approved a couple months ago to the non-contributing house that we approved to be demolished and replaced with a 1.5-story home, do we know the peak height of that, just like offhand by chance?
The peak height of that house they were only building it slightly bigger than what existed there, and I think it was going to be 22 feet. If I remember.
And the peak height on this application?
The peak height on this one, let me double check my notes. 28 feet to peak.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, great. We'll now hear from the applicant. I see them here, but I think they're still muted. Oh, here we go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, this is Beth Lassen, 312 West Idaho Street, Boise. Good evening, commissioners. I guess I'm going to start out. It seems like massing is the word of the evening. And so I'm just going to jump right in there and address the point. Ted did mention this will be a large house on the block, but this is by far the largest lot on the block. And we are under lot coverage. We are on 3 of the setbacks beyond the minimum requirement. Even on the south property line where it's a 5-foot setback, we are 9 foot with a couple 7-foot bump outs. So we are not pushing the boundaries on this property. Excuse me, I've got a little technical thing happening here. So I want to state in the guidelines, and it says, and this is also in the staff report from guideline 5.5.3, when new houses are larger than adjacent or neighboring houses, they must be designed in a way that breaks up the massing. And that's exactly what we did on this house. We have broken it up. There's really no two-story wall on this house. And we have wrapped it with a single-story porch. The space on the north that doesn't have the porch is actually considered a story and a half because the pony walls are only 2.5 feet tall. So we, on all three sides of the house that are visible, we have reduced it down to as a kind of a transition from the street up to the technical term of a two-story house. The midpoint at this house is actually at 18 feet, which does meet the 1.5 story requirement. So it has a lot of the elements of a story and a half. Granted, yes, it is bigger. It has more than one dormer. The dormers are bigger than 10 feet, but also those dormers are designed to match the rooms below, to be in proportion with the house. So, you know, and actually have a usable room on the inside. So that is basically how we addressed the breaking up of the massing. Let me think of some of my other points here. I want to, one thing I do want to bring up is that we would like to keep the metal roofing on the porch. There has been a lot of approved new homes with the entire roof as a metal roof in the last few years. In fact, I've done a couple of them. So I know they exist, and there's two on the street I live on. So unfortunately, I don't have the pictures in front of me to show you, but there are a lot of new homes with full metal roofs. We are asking to accent the porch with a metal roof. And there are a lot of examples of that throughout the North End and East End. So we would just ask that you consider that we could keep the metal roof. Let's see. That is about it. I guess I'll answer any questions that you might have.
Are there any questions for Beth? Not seeing or hearing anyone unmute. So I will take that as no questions. Beth, will we be hearing from the applicants themselves this evening?
No, not unless there's a question I cannot answer and only they can answer.
Okay,
they would
great.
rather not speak.
Sure. Thank you so much. Okay. Sherry, are you still here from Nina?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Same as before in the earlier items, Nina wishes to be a party of record for any items regarding massing issues and what's a common concern for surrounding neighbors where houses are single story or 1.5 is to have such a large 2-story structure that kind of dwarfs them. So Nina just wishes to be a party of record for this one in regards to its size relative to the neighboring houses.
Great. So can you clarify you are in opposition to this based on the massing dwarfing neighboring properties?
Nina doesn't wish to support the size of this house relative to the surrounding neighbors.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions from the commission at this point? Okay, I'm not seeing anything. The only person we had to sign up for this application are the applicants. So if there are any members of the public wishing to testify, please virtually raise your hand. You can do that by pressing *9.
Madam
Okay.
Chair, it appears the applicants themselves have raised their hand. And
Oh,
they can,
excellent.
Sorry about that.
Nope, it's all good. If you could please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, Cindy. My name is Sarah. I'm my parents' spokesperson because they're too nervous, but they're Joseph Mary Forager. They live at 1303 North 6th Street right now. And they're pretty nervous, so I'm gonna kind of take over a little bit for them. They just wanted to say that they are really excited to build their first home in the North End, and they really trust Beth's expertise on the home and the massing. They also really wanted to point out that none of their neighbors have presented an objection to the size of the home, and that just to speak a little bit to Nina's concern, also that this lot is technically 3 lots, and previous proposals in the past that hadn't made it through, and the reason why they were fortunate enough to get this large lot is because previous proposals had multiple dwellings with the intentions to be like rentals and such. And that's not their intention. As you can tell, they want to build a nice big family house for all of us to have Christmas in. And they also wanted to point out that they have only 33% lot coverage. It's a pretty big lot for the North End. And that even includes my dad's workshop for his woodworking. So not that big of a house compared to how big the lot is for the North End. So other than that, they'll defer to Beth's expertise on this.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate you speaking for them.
You're welcome, and they're excited to be here.
Fantastic. Are there any further questions for the applicant, either for Beth or for Sarah on behalf of her parents? Okay, seeing and hearing none, and seeing and hearing no further requests from the public to testify, we will go ahead and close the hearing and render a decision. May I have a motion or discussion?
I think the house might be, or may I speak?
Yes.
I'm not super educated in this stuff, but I think Nina's concern is very valid that the house may be too big. And I'd be curious to hear what the other commissioners think about that.
Thank you. I guess I have a few comments. Mainly, I personally don't have any issues with the size of the house. I think in comparison to the size of the lot, I don't see an issue with the massing or with the size of the house in comparison to the lot. And I also don't have any objections to the use of a metal roof on the porch. So those are just my thoughts. Is there any further discussion or a motion?
As far as, I mean, it's a large house, but we also do need to take into consideration the size of the lot and also the location of the structure within the lot. I think they've pushed it back far enough into the lot that the massing is going to be minimized. I don't think it's going to have quite the impact as it would if it were a smaller lot located closer to the setbacks or maximizing those setback allowances. I think the design was carefully done and thoughtfully done with, like the applicant said, with the first story, single story wraparound porch, 1.5 story sections of the home. There are some 2-story sections of the home, but overall, I believe the design was done sensitively, and I think it fits the size of the lot well, especially with considering its location on the lot.
I concur. Thank you, Commissioner Richter. May I have a motion or some
Madam-
additional question?
Madam Chair, I have a comment. I'm gonna agree with Commissioner Richter on what he said. The lot is quite large. It is a corner lot. I think the design is thoughtfully done, taking in consideration of all those things. I do have a question for the rest of the commission about the metal roof detail. I know it's not an approved roofing material. It's apparent that Beth would like to keep that on the building, and I would like some more clarity or maybe some more discussion or answers from the rest of the commissioners on how they feel about that. From history, Beth mentioned there's been that some have been approved, so I don't have that history. So if anyone can comment on that, that would be helpful.
Madam Chair, yeah, the metal roof wall, I think it adds to the design of the house, and it looks really good. I know it's not allowed. I'm sure there are many houses in the north and east end with metal roofs. I don't ever remember approving one because it's not an approved roofing material. The fact that it's only on the roof of the porch could potentially be considered that it's not really the roof, it's more of an accent because it's an accent roof over the porch. But in general, it's not, as far as I know, we've never approved one, and it's not an approved material. So I would think that sticking with that, we wouldn't approve them to keep the metal roof over the porch.
Thank you, Commissioner Weaver. My thought, which you touched on, is that it would be an accent piece and could be removed. So it isn't something that would necessarily be permanent to the structure, which is why I personally don't have an issue with it. But I suppose I'm indifferent either way. Does anyone have any additional comments on that or would like to make a motion?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Richter, I know I can't name exactly what applications were approved or not approved because of metal roofs, but I remember there's been a number of projects that have come before us with metal roofing that have been built with that detail in the application. Personally, I think it's a nice detail. I think it's an accent that really helps the design of the home, and I think by removing that detail would minimize the design a little bit. So I would like to make a motion to approve DRH 20-00065, striking condition C from the conditions of approval.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Montoto,
Aye.
Valderrama,
Aye.
Koski,
Nay.
Richter,
Aye.
Rupp,
Aye.
and Weaver.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-1.
Thank you. The next item we have on our agenda this evening, I appreciate you all. It's a long evening, so.
Ted, Madam Chair, if I could just jump in real quick. We're a couple hours in. I don't know if there's any kind of interest in a short break. It's kind of a long time to stare at a computer screen. I thought I'd throw that out there.
Is there any interest in a break?
How many more do we have? I can't remember where we are.
We are on 7 of 12.
Maybe
Or
we
6
could
of
just
12. 6, no, yeah, 7 of 12.
Maybe we could just take a 5-minute break.
5-minute break.
Go to the restroom.
Okay. I'm not super familiar with how breaks work on Zoom. Do we just?
Let's set a time to be back. So let's be back at 8:20. It's 8:15 right now.
Okay, great. Do I need to call the meeting back to order?
That probably wouldn't hurt.
Go ahead and do
Wouldn't hurt. Okay, I'm going to call the meeting back to order. And we are going to go ahead and move on to the next item on our agenda. And that is item number 7, DRH 20-00078. This is for a certificate of appropriateness request to demolish a non-contributing 1-story single-family structure with attached garage and to construct a 1-story single-family structure with attached garage and associated site improvements located at 601 West Sherman Street. And we will now hear from staff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you see the presentation?
Let's see here. I can, it looks like.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, the application is to demolish an existing ranch-style house and construct a new similarly styled house on the lot, generally in the same footprint with a few changes. Again, the existing is a ranch style with an attached garage on the west side as the alley runs along the west as well. I'll go ahead and go to the site plans. This is proposed and existing. The existing and proposed, they're generally in the same footprint with some differences. And I'll show you later on the elevations that this style is going to be pretty close to the same as well. One of the issues with this, or one of the, I guess, things to consider is the applicant was originally going to remodel the house. And they liked the way it looked. They liked the style. They were going to remodel it. And as they dove into the remodeling process, they discovered that there was a lot of structural issues with the house to a point to where remodeling became infeasible and they were going to have to just demolish it. But because they liked the style and everything, they wanted to generally keep it the same style. So that you would see in the letter of explanation. I'll say, as you'll note as well, that access is still proposed to use that same curb cut. So there's an existing curb cut and the house takes access, sorry, on the existing plan. I'll go back to the aerial. The access occurs here, as you can see, directly from Sherman Street. With the new plan, the applicants are proposing to keep that access. However, and typically, as we've discussed with another one of our applications, typically we do want to see that access taken from the alley when the alley exists. However, the applicant has a number of trees on the property. I'll go back to the aerial. A number of mature trees throughout the property that they want to preserve. So they met with staff and we had a meeting amongst ourselves and we decided that we would go ahead and recommend approval of this due to the fact that the trees, to preserve the trees, as well as they weren't creating a new curb cut or new access, but we're using one that was already in place. And so really the reasoning was to preserve the mature trees throughout the site. And again, as you can see, it's in the generally same footprint as I mentioned before with some slight changes. And here are the elevations, proposed front elevation and the existing front elevation below. So like I said, same style with some minor upgrade changes to the style. And the side elevations. This is also a very large lot. A very large corner lot. Standard size. And here are some photos of the house. And here's some photos of some surrounding houses. As you can see here, we're almost having the opposite issue we've had on some of the other applications. We have a one-story house proposed, one-story ranch style house proposed with taller houses around it. So you have 2-story structures and 1.5-story structures around it. That's not a problem. It's just a reverse kind of thing that we're dealing with now in this one. So it is a modestly sized house as far as massing goes, in a neighborhood of a really eclectic neighborhood with a mix of massing and styles. Staff is recommending approval of this application with recommended conditions of approval in the staff report. And I'll stand for questions.
Madam Chair and Ted, I have a question regarding the setback on the street side, the 6th Street side. Can you address that? What's required? And there's a little bump out addition drawn on there. And
yeah, so street side access can be 15 feet. They are adding a bump out there. And I apologize, in the report, in my setback, in the section where I put the setbacks, I confused the issue with that. But on a front for living space, front and street side access can be 15 feet. So they do still meet that setback.
thank you.
Are there any additional questions for Ted before we hear from the applicant? I'm not seeing or hearing any, so we will now hear from the applicant. Beth, are you still here?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. This is Steve Hoffine, and I live at 601 Sherman. Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I just wanted to let you know that while we've lived here since 1999 and plan to continue living here for the foreseeable future, I'm not sure if Ted brought this up or not, but this project was really precipitated by a flood in our home. That said, y'all may want to kind of keep an eye on your washing machine hoses. But in addition to the flood, our home has deferred maintenance issues that need to be addressed. And we were really just seeking to reuse the existing foundation that we have and, in essence, replace a ranch home with a ranch home. So thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hoffheim. Do you have anything further from your architect?
I'm not sure. Maybe she's on mute or something.
I see her here, but I'm not sure. So
Oh, okay.
I
Maybe
suppose.
there's a technical difficulty.
Oh, hello.
Oh, hello.
Oh, hi. I was speaking and I could tell no one could hear me. So
oh no.
Thank you, Steve, for jumping in. Beth Lassen, 312 West Idaho Street, Boise. As Ted was doing his staff report, it made me laugh, and I almost wish I'd get my 2 clients to switch lots and all would be great, right? So this is a ranch house. Kate and Steve love their ranch house, like he said. And our intent was to remodel it. So the biggest issue besides the flood was that the plate height was just barely over 7 feet in the house. And to add height to the wall, you're basically rebuilding every wall. And with a brick wall, it's very hard to you can't just cut openings in brick or fill brick in and make it look right, especially you know, of a specific age brick. So it just became problematic. And that's why we decided to kind of rebuild the same house. And we're rebuilding it on the same foundation, the house foundation, because it's in great shape. And there's no reason to tear it up. So we're really intending to rebuild the same house. One of the issues was to keep the curb cut. And as Ted said, it's already there, it's existing. And if Ted, if you can go back to, oh, that's a good photo. So if you look at the property directly to the west, it has a curb cut going onto the street. The property directly to the north has a curb cut directly going onto the street. And the property on the northeast corner of those four also has a curb cut going onto the street. So it's again, a precedent has set that there are 4 curb cuts on this corner of the alley. So and the fact that it's already there, we felt that's where we asked to keep it, I guess. And also the other issue was, had we gone on the alley, we would have to eliminate all those trees. So I think that is all, unless you have questions.
I do have one question.
Okay.
Is the existing front elevation, I'm just looking at the rendering here of the garage. Is that garage original from 1959?
No, actually it was a carport. So
Was it? Okay.
There were never walls. There's not a foundation under it as is. So that's why we're actually going to build a foundation under the garage.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Are there additional questions?
Madam Chair, I have one question.
Yes, sure.
Speaking of the trees, it looks like a tree in front of the house will be removed. One of the large pine trees. Is there anything wrong with it? It looked, I couldn't tell. I think it's maybe a porch or something that's being built out there.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yes. So that tree, and that actually was one of the reasons we wanted to add more windows. It's a big evergreen. And actually Kate and Steve planted that when they first moved in. And it was so dark because it's on the north side and it blocks everything. So we have proposed to do a little privacy courtyard there. And again, you can see there's a lot of trees on this lot. So to allow more light into the house, they were willing to give up that tree.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
It does.
Great. Are there any additional questions for the applicant? Okay, I'm not seeing or hearing anything, so we will go ahead and move on to the neighborhood association. Sherry, are you still here?
Sherry's still here, and Nina wishes to be a party of record in support of this project with staff's conditions for approval, and especially appreciates the preservation of the existing tree canopy.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
At this point, are there any questions from the commission? Okay, not seeing or hearing anything. And let's see here. I don't believe we have anyone signed up to testify. Is there anyone from the public wishing to testify regarding this application? If so, please virtually raise your hand. Okay, I'm not seeing anything. So we can return to the applicant for any rebuttal if they have anything further they would like to add.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Oh, well, thank you again for your time. I really don't have anything to add, but again, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, and with that, we will go ahead and close the hearing and render a decision. Do I have a motion or any discussion?
Madam Chair and Commissioners, I just want to say that I think this was a great job by Steve and Kate and Beth to put together a design that works well on an existing foundation. I question a little bit the garage because we don't tend to want a garage front facing like that, but they're basically replacing one that was there already. And I think the design of the house, I think it's fantastic, and it's a good use of the property, and the saving of the trees is great. I'm gonna go check my washer hose as soon as this meeting's over. Well, I don't have to go through with that. But with that, I will move that DRH 20-00078 be approved with the conditions that are listed.
Fantastic. Do I have a second?
I second.
Oh, who was that first?
Xavier Suarez.
I'm not sure. Adam, can you weigh in on if Xavier can second?
I think the student member can no longer vote, and so that would probably apply to providing a second as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Was there
Sounds
another
good.
second by a commissioner, by another commissioner? I thought I heard another one.
Erica.
Erica, great. And before we vote, I would just like to acknowledge that it is pretty rare for us to receive an application that is using an existing foundation on a new construction. So I just want to take a moment to applaud that because I think that's fantastic. So will the clerk please call the roll?
Montoto,
Aye.
Valderrama,
Aye.
Koski,
Aye.
Richter,
Aye.
Rupp,
Aye.
Weaver.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. And the next item we have on our agenda this evening is item number 8, DRH 20-00082. This is a certificate of appropriateness request to demolish a non-contributing 2-story office building and to construct a 2-story single-family structure with attached garage and associated site improvements located at 516 West Franklin Street. And we will now hear from staff.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. The project is located in the Hayes Street Historic District and in an area that is zoned light office. Many of the traditional or historic structures in this area have been converted to office and multifamily uses over time. Existing building on site was constructed in about 1972 as an Art Deco style office building and is non-contributing in the district. A single family structure is located adjacent to the west and a multifamily structure located adjacent to the east, as you can see here. The lot is quite large, at about 100 feet in width and 120 in depth. And as you can see from the proposed site plan, the footprint of the building will be fairly extensive, but at 26% lot coverage will still remain below the 35 required in the guidelines. Additionally, the house will exceed the side setbacks, leaving additional space between properties. The front setback appears to be about 30 feet. This sets the house further back from the street than is typically desired in the guidelines and in the code. A 15 to 20 foot setback would be more appropriate and would improve the street presence of the house. The garage will be located adjacent to the alley and will actually be attached to the house via a breezeway. As you can see, the house is designed to be quite modern with a flat roof planes and horizontal and vertical design elements. Though the house is large, there's quite a bit of modulation incorporated into the design, which effectively breaks up the massing, presenting a less massive appearing structure. Overall, the size and massing of the structure on this large lot is not altogether inappropriate. Additionally, there are large structures with more massing found in the immediate neighborhood and throughout the district. However, staff finds the design of the project to be problematic for the historic district. Though the guidelines state that modern elements may be introduced in new construction, this design may be too much of an outlier and not compliant with the spirit of the guidelines. The commission has in the past allowed more modern elements in new construction. However, there is typically an underlying compatibility with the historic district. For instance, constructing a new building that is congruous with the district, but incorporates or blends more modern elements with traditional elements has been found to be acceptable. In this case, staff has found it more difficult to reconcile the project with the guidelines. However, it is understood that the neighborhood is office in nature and use, and provides a fairly eclectic array of designs constructed after the period of significance for the historic district. So here are some other elevations of the building, the rear elevation, side elevation, and a rendering. And photos of the existing building. As you can see, it's designed to be in the Art Deco tradition, but it was constructed in the 70s. And here is the Eclectic Neighborhood. This is the property to the east, which is multifamily. These are the properties to the west, which are more traditionally designed, styled single-family homes, but probably used as office or multifamily. And the bottom left picture, you'll see that's actually across the street, across Franklin Street. So an office building, modern designed office building. The picture on the lower right is actually located off of the alley. That was approved, I can't remember, a couple of years ago. This structure was approved, but it is not readily visible. This section of the house is not readily visible from the street. It is a modern design, but located off the alley, across the alley from the subject property. Some more photos. So some of the concerns with this project, use massing and forms similar to neighboring buildings. It's kind of hit and miss with that one. There are neighboring buildings that are quite large and more modern in style, but right next to it and across the alley and in the surrounding blocks, the massing is more of the historic and traditional styles. But you certainly can find an eclectic array of structures, of massings and styles. They use design elements such as roof forms, lines, openings, and other characteristics commonly found in the historic district. Have a building form which is unique in the district, but relates to the neighboring buildings and to the neighborhood. So an argument could be made, that maybe it relates to the office building across the street or to the multifamily to the east. But in general, the historic district, exists due to the historic historic traditional structures constructed in the period of significance. The next one, it's appropriate to use massing and building forms which are completely foreign to the historic district, inappropriate to use massing and forms which are completely foreign to the historic district. Uniform setbacks and building spacing should be maintained in new construction. So those are some of the points of the guidelines that we kind of looked at, and like I said, there's an argument to be made that there's enough going on in this eclectic neighborhood that it might fit, but this one we went a little conservative with our determination and determined that the intent of the guidelines maybe is not met with this very modern style. Staff has received 3 comments in support of the application and 1 opposed due to incompatible design. Staff recommends denial of DRH 2082 due to the issues expressed in the commission packet. I did make a note here, if the design of the new construction is denied, the applicant would like to request approval to demolish the existing office building and come back later with designs that are acceptable to the commission. Thank you.
Ted, I have a few questions. I'm just looking through the packet here and I'm curious, do you happen to know if any of the surrounding kind of Art Deco office buildings that are not the property in question, if they are contributing?
The Art Deco buildings that are immediately surrounding would have been constructed outside the period of significance. For instance, the one in the lower section here, I believe was constructed in the 60s maybe. And then the one in the upper right is obviously a more modern construction. But I didn't look at all of them. So I'm not 100% sure, but in going around and looking at them and being familiar with the neighborhood, I don't think any of them would have been considered contributing.
I'm looking at the page, just for reference, page 330 of the packet, and it looks like there's a couple of properties adjacent to the west. Yes, the ones that are in the upper right-hand corner. And I mean, clearly those are most likely not office spaces. Those appear to be residential, perhaps even multifamily, but I was just curious to see, because this is a very eclectic block. And I guess that's my only question. Are there any other questions for Ted? No? Okay, thank you, Ted. We will now hear from the applicant.
Hello?
Hello.
It's me again.
You've been busy.
I have been very busy. And so thank you. I promise this is my last one tonight. So just to answer the question on the adjacent properties to the left real quick, the one directly to the west is used as a residence. The one next to that, I believe, is the Conservation League of Idaho or something, but it is a business. Just throw that out there. And I know I'm pressing the limits here on a contemporary style, but just give me a minute. I'm going to try and convince you guys that a contemporary design can be congruous with this particular neighborhood. And first off, just as Ted had stated, this is a very diverse neighborhood. Yes, there's some historic homes, but there's just as many government office buildings, parking lots, and modern business complexes. Secondly, this lot is zoned for office space. We actually have to get a conditional use just to put a house on it. Again, it's just not your typical North End, East End residential historic neighborhood. The guidelines, as the staff report stated, it is preferable to design a congruous contemporary structure rather than duplicate or mimic the design of historic buildings. So, you know, we were going that route. And also, the staff report states a building form may be created which is unique in the district but relates to the neighborhood in massing. And that's exactly what we tried to do. It's offices, it's businesses, it's parking lots, but it's a house and it's broken up and it's got all sorts of elevations and things going on. So that was the approach we took. And I guess one of the letters, and there's been quite a few of them in support, but one of them is from local architects, Sherry McKibben and Doug Cooper. And I know this was in your packet, but I'm just going to do a little quote from their nice letter that says, the project architecture is contemporary and representative of this time in history and is a good example of such. The massing and materials contribute to variety and visual interest of a walkable neighborhood. So that is what I have to say. I can answer any questions, and I'm not sure if the homeowners or the lot owners, if they can hear and if they want to speak.
I do see them here.
Okay.
Oh, here we go.
Hello? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Please state
Okay.
your name and address for the record.
My name is Jim Chalfant, and our address is 3950 North Hackberry Way, Boise. I think Beth did a good job describing the neighborhood. This neighborhood is eclectic, and it is right on the seam between downtown and what most people might think of as the North End. So literally one side of the street may be a business building or a government building, and on the other may be a residence. So this home is really blending what's in the neighborhood. And I just wanted to, this as a side note, the house to the west is a residence, but it's currently being proposed as a hair salon. So that's how transitionary this neighborhood is. But so that was our whole idea, is to, I know Beth, some people refer to it as a contemporary design, and I believe it is, but it's really more, in my view, it's kind of an urban contemporary, which is very fitting for the neighborhood. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chalfant. Beth, do you have anything further?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I did have one quick question for you. It's just to clarify. So the current building square footage is just under 8,000 square feet. Is that right?
Oh, gosh. Ted might have that. I don't have that in front of me, but it's large. Yeah.
And then the proposed new house is around 3,000?
It is. Hold on, let me get that. Hopefully I have that in front of me. The main floor, the footprint is 2,500 and the upper floor is 12. So yeah, so like just 3,700.
And then it's only about 26% lot coverage. Since
Yes, exactly. It's a very large lot. It's, what does it say here? The lot is 12,000 square feet.
And then Ted did mention in his report that there is he would like to see, or staff would like to see a preferred setback of about 15 to 20 feet front setback. Can you comment on that?
Yes, and I might have Jim chime in on this too. It's, you know, we've got these planters in front again to kind of do this stair stepping, and they really don't want a really big backyard. Now, it's actually fairly close to the house on the west as far as the front setback. It might be back a few feet. So, I mean, we would certainly address that. And I don't know if you can tell, because the existing building is 40 feet back from the front property line. This proposed is 30 feet back from, it's the most forward point, I guess, is 30 feet back. So there might be a little wiggle room in there to bring it forward slightly.
Okay, thank you so much.
Uh-huh.
Are there any other questions for Beth or the Chalfants?
Madam Chair and Beth,
yes.
I got a couple questions. Beth, I don't see any dormers or metal roofing on this one.
I know. What are we gonna do?
Yeah. I did have a question about the setback from the front, and I actually think I'm in agreement with you mostly on it's because of its mass. It would seem to make sense to be where it's at. So I can agree with you on that. But I would like to ask a question for you, and maybe you could address an attached garage. So
Oh, I know.
Down on that, can you talk towards that design, please?
Well, again, it's not your typical north end bungalow with a detached garage. This, and as you can see, we have minimized the connective piece, and we're kind of treating it as kind of almost a glass breezeway through there. Now that building directly to the east is a large, or it's a long, I should say, parking garage for the apartments, you know, further east. So that is just a long wall. And so we're kind of creating a buffer from that too, a visual buffer. So when you're outside in the back patio, you're not looking at the backside of this long, very unattractive garage, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else for Beth? No? Okay. Sherry, are you here still from Nina?
I'm here, but I don't know that this falls under Nina, so we will stay off the record on this one.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Is there anyone representing any other neighborhood association here to speak? I'm trying to think of the boundary. I don't know if this would be DBA.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
point of clarification. This is actually in the North End Neighborhood Association boundary. It's the Hayes Street Historic District, but it is still within the North End Neighborhood Association.
Okay, thank you. Sherry, would you like to state anything on the record?
I'm going to go with no on this one.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's see here on the sign up sheet. I don't have anyone signed up other than Beth to testify. Is there any member of the public wishing to testify regarding this application? If so, please virtually raise your hand. Okay, I'm not seeing anything. Beth, would you or Mr. Chalfont like to have a few minutes for rebuttal?
Let me think here. I guess the lack of neighborhood opposition is, speaks highly of this being, or I guess the neighbors are excited to get rid of the existing building and put a residence here. So that, and no one, yeah. So the fact that the neighbors are in support of this, I think speaks highly of it. And that's all. Am I still on?
Yeah, I hear you, Beth. I'm not sure where
Okay, I'm
where everyone else went.
Has everyone gone to bed? Because that's
can you all hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Sorry, I think I was talking, but no one could hear me. So I suppose if there's nothing further from you, Beth, or from Mr. Chalfont, we will go ahead and close the hearing and render a decision. I do have a few comments, I suppose, before I will entertain a motion. when I first looked at the packet, the design really struck me as something I don't know, I guess I suppose I was just kind of shocked. But then as I was looking through the rest of the packet and seeing the different photos included of inspiration from different historic properties within the North End, I felt much more at ease and I suppose more comfortable with it. And then also, you know, going back and looking at the actual block face of the property in question, I felt, I don't know, just more comfortable with the idea of this residential property going in there. So I think my only real issue is I suppose the setback, but being that it is 10 feet forward from the existing property, I'm not super concerned about it. So I'm curious to hear what my fellow commissioners think.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Richter.
I had the same, well, kind of the same feeling as you when we first looked at this application. I knew right away, looking at this application, that this was a pretty bold statement and an appropriate statement for the location for this building, for this home. I'm very familiar with the location of this home. I'm very familiar with the building that it should be replacing. And, you know, due to the eclecticism of the neighborhood and the surrounding structures, I think the design of this home, I think it would fit really well. Although it doesn't, you know, check the boxes of, you know, traditional historic homes within the neighborhood. I think it truly does fit this specific neighborhood within this district.
Thank you. I agree. Would you like to make a motion, or does anyone have anything further to discuss?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve DRH 20-00082.
I will second.
Was that Commissioner Kosky?
Yes.
Okay, great. Does anyone have anything further to discuss before we call the roll? No? Okay. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Montoto.
Aye.
Valderrama.
Aye.
Kosky.
Aye.
Richter.
Aye.
Rupp.
Aye.
Weaver.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you very much. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 items left. So the next item we'll be hearing is item number 9, DRH 20-00119. This is a certificate of appropriateness request to demolish a detached garage and construct a 2-story detached garage with accessory dwelling unit and associated site improvements located at 2425 West Ellis Street. And now we will hear from staff.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, we're getting pretty late, and in the spirit of respecting the time of our commissioners and our applicants, I think I'm going to go pretty quickly. And on some of these, just tell you that we're recommending approval with conditions, and then allow and just stand for questions. So I think I'll go ahead and do that with these, and I'll just stand for questions, save the time from the presentation. You've looked at these in the packet, so I think you're familiar with them. So I think I'll do that and just skip to the end and just say we are recommending approval with conditions of DRH 2119 with recommended conditions of approval in the staff report.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Are there any questions for Ted? Okay, seeing and hearing none, we will now hear from the applicant. Please state your name and address for the record.
Madam Chair, could you have them raise their hand? I do not see them.
Oh, sure. If the applicant is present, would you please virtually raise your hand?
Hi.
Are you there? Hi.
Yep, we're here.
Fantastic. If you could state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name's M.A. Goldie. I live at 201 West 39th in Garden City. Madam Chair and Commissioner, thanks for letting me chat about this project. My client needs a garage because the existing one is basically falling down. While we thought about doing this, we wanted to investigate being able to put an ADU on top of it. While initially discussing the idea with planners a few months ago, we hit on the basic design idea of trying to make the proposed new structure appear to be a 1.5-story structure, hence the design I have submitted. It is actually 2 stories, but the roof lines play off the roof lines of the main house, and it is not quite as tall as the main house. The proposed structure is on the alley and at the back of the lot, so I feel it is absolutely unobtrusive as seen from the street, even though it's technically 2 stories. We are only increasing our lot coverage in a minimal way from 25 to 27%. And although the site plan might be a bit hard to read, we intend to meet all the setbacks and the proper driveway size. So thank you.
Thank you. And my name is Karen Bubb. I'm the client. I would just like to add that there was a question regarding the ability to reuse the existing structure. And the structure has no cement floor. It's a dirt floor, and there's no real foundations. It's just on blocks. So there's no, the foundation has to be poured new because there isn't a substantial enough foundation for the structure. The roof has several holes and needs to be redone. So there's to try to renovate the structure doesn't make sense. And that's why we're looking to take it down and build a new structure. And I'm happy to answer it. We're happy to answer any questions that you or other commissioners may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the applicant? Okay, I'm seeing and hearing none. Thank you very much. Is Sherry still here?
Sherry's still here.
Hi, Sherry. Do you have anything to say on behalf of Nina?
Just that Nina wishes to be a party of record in support of the project with staff's conditions for approval.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Let's see, sign up sheet. I don't have anyone signed up to testify regarding this application. If there is anyone who would like to, please virtually raise your hand. Okay, I'm not seeing anything. If the applicant has anything further they would like to add, please do so.
I just wanted to add that I have spoken to my neighbors on the west and the east side and shared the plans with them, and they're supportive of the project. And there's no issues with my neighbors on the project at all.
Fantastic. That's helpful to know. Thank you very much. Are there any additional questions for the applicant? Okay, it does not appear so. So with that, we will go ahead and close the hearing and render a decision. Do I have any discussion or motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve DRH 20-00119 with the conditions of approval stated within staff's report.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Was that Rep?
Carolina.
Carolina.
Or we could battle it, Erica.
We'll go ahead and have Carolina as the second. Is there any discussion on this before we vote? No? Okay, great. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Montoto,
Aye.
Valderrama,
Aye.
Koski,
Aye.
Richter,
Aye.
Rupp,
Aye.
Weaver.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Great, thank you. The next item we have this evening is DRH 20-00130. This is a certificate of appropriateness request to construct a second-story addition to the existing garage with an accessory dwelling unit and associated site improvements located at 1611 10th Street. Ted, can we please have the report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I did previously, I'll just leave it at that. Staff recommends approval of DRH 20-130 with the recommended conditions of approval in the staff report, and I'll stand for questions.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions for Ted?
Madam Chair and Ted, yeah, I've got some questions. This is now I guess the proposal is for a 2-story ADU and on a substandard lot. It's my understanding that we would not allow a 2-story ADU unless either property on either side has a 2-story building on it, which they do not. Can you address that?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Koski, it's not necessarily the case that a 2-story is not allowed, you know, on a substandard lot. It's given the context of the neighborhood and the design of the structure and the appropriateness of the use and the design. The Historic Commission, as previously stated, has the ability to override the provisions of the substandard lot ordinance. In this case, the garage does not. It is a 2-story garage. It does not exceed the height of the existing single-family structure, main structure on the property, and meets the setbacks that were established during the approval process for the existing house. And so we've decided to recommend approval of the structure. But the commission certainly has the ability to. You're not bound by the substandard lot ordinance if you think the project works.
Another question. With this second story being added, the guidelines change for setback, and it would now be required for a 5-foot setback, right? And this does not meet that. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Koski, that was a discussion in my staff report. However, in having talking about this with our management team, it was determined that we would allow, because the entire project, the house and garage, was approved with reduced setbacks due to the fact that both of these properties were developed. Let me go back to the site plan. Both of these properties were developed at the same time. Provision in the substandard lot ordinance allows reduced setbacks when you're developing two or more adjacent substandard lots. And so it's been determined that we would allow them to keep the 4-foot setback that the garage currently has.
Okay, and then another question. I actually have 2 more. The livable square foot percentage on a substandard lot is 55%, and this is now, with this, we're now at 59%. Any comments from staff on that?
Yeah, so we discussed that further, previously when Casey was presenting on her project. And a lot of that has to do with the massing being developed on a substandard lot and the size of a house. Let me see how much, let me check my notes. There, part of this, the percentage of this that's in the ADU and the percentage that's in the, I think there's a basement on this one. Right, so at 59%, the residential floor area will exceed the 55. However, 23% of the residential floor area will be located in a is located in a basement or will be with this, and 13% located in the ADU. So leaving 23% of the residential floor area actually in the single family structure. So a portion of that being located in the basement where it doesn't really impact the above ground massing of the structure. And then a portion of that being located in an ADU structure, which does add to some massing, but it is also ADUs. Let me go back to the ADUs are, as you know, being promoted by the city as providing additional density and living space. So given that a good portion of that living space is broken up from the main living space, we've recommended approval of that.
Thank you, Ted. And last question, is there a slide where you can show us pictures of the properties on either side of it from the alley view?
Ted, I have that here. It's page 416 in the packet.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Koski, here are some alley views as well, looking along the properties.
So it's my understanding, and when I did a site drive by, that the neighboring garages, they were all one story, definitely to the north and south of it and across. So thank you, Ted and Madam.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Ted regarding this application? No? Okay. We will now hear from the applicant. Go ahead and state your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Amanda Swales. I'm the designer on the project. My address is 4505 West Bethel Street in Boise. I want to thank everyone here on this long call. To address some of the questions, the house directly behind the alley is a two-story, possibly larger. It is much larger than the proposed second story on the garage. The garage itself has a very steep pitch. It's an 812 pitch. And it is approximately 17.5 feet high already. And with this design, we just tried to keep this as basic as possible, keeping it shorter than the existing house and hidden from the front or from 10th Street. The new proposed roof pitch is a 612. And when all the math is done, that's about a 7-foot difference. So we're kind of raising that entire garage about 7 feet. Other questions about the percentage? Yes, there is a basement in the existing house. This house was built in 2017, along with the others two next to it, and the garage was built then. And the design kind of reflects what's happening there, keeping things very minimal. I guess I'll answer any other questions.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions for the applicant? It does not appear so. Thank you very much. Sherry, are you still here?
I am still here.
Do you have anything to say on behalf of Nina?
Just that Nina wishes to be a party of record for items that exceed lot coverage and massing, and at the same time is in support of the city's increase in density of housing and ADUs. So overall, Nina supports the project.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for being here. Oops, I muted myself. Okay. So I do not have anyone signed up to testify on this project. If there's anyone here, please virtually raise your hand. Okay, I'm not seeing anything. Are there any additional questions from the commission? It does not appear so. Does the applicant have anything further they'd like to add?
I did have a question about that 4-foot setback. I could not find anything in the history of the original building plans that there was any variance or agreement or PDU about that 4-foot setback, and it was on the original plans. Is this something that we will need to file for because it's existing, or does it kind of roll into, you know, what has already been approved?
Ted, can you speak to that? I remember these, the applications for these houses in 2017, but I don't remember, I was pregnant and don't remember. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. As I previously stated, the substandard lot ordinance does allow for reduced internal setbacks when multiple structures are basically being built at the same time by the same applicant, which is what occurred here. These were built before my time, but that's what occurred here. So the reduced setback was given to the entire property during that time. So they were, through the substandard lot ordinance, given a 4-foot interior setback instead of 5. And we've and as I stated, staff decided to go ahead and honor that, even with the expansion of the garage.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any further questions for the applicant at this point? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So with that, we'll go ahead and close the hearing and render a decision. May I have a motion or discussion?
Madam Chair, I'll go for a motion here. I'll move to approve DRH 20-00130 with the conditions of approval found within the staff report.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Sorry, I missed who that was. Was that Erica?
Yes.
Okay, great. Is there any discussion on this before?
Madam Chair, I disagree on this one. We're putting a 2-story building behind a 1.5-story house. In a while, though, it is just under the height of the existing house. The properties on either side, this is going to be a much larger and taller building, and it is on a substandard lot, and it is a 2-story ADU. So I'm going to disagree with the motion.
Thank you for your comments. I would just like to say that I will be supporting this application and voting in favor, primarily due to the fact that it is on a substandard lot, so we can modify the substandard lot ordinance how we see fit as the commission, but also due to the city's move towards increasing density. I think it's a fantastic way to not only eliminate parking, but to increase density by having living space in the ADU. So with that, I will go ahead and ask the clerk to call the roll.
Montoto.
Aye.
Valderrama.
Aye.
Koski.
Nay.
Richter.
Aye.
Rupp.
Aye.
Weaver.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-1.
Thank you. The next item we have on our agenda is DRH 20-00135. This is a certificate of appropriateness request to construct a second-story addition and basement to the existing single-family structure and to construct a 2-story detached garage with an accessory dwelling unit and associated site improvements located at 408 West O'Farrell Street. And we will now hear from staff.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Similarly, I'll skip the presentation and go right to the recommendation. We are recommending approval with conditions of DRH 2135. I will add that I think there are a couple of people online that would like to speak to this one, and we have heard from a couple of people in the neighborhood. The main concern is with the ADU, the garage and ADU, and the massing of the garage. I'll also address, similarly in the last application, this one does exceed the residential floor area quite a bit. However, again, as I stated last time, we when I'm looking at these, I break it down. What is that residential floor area really? And in this case, 25% of the residential floor area will be located in the basement. 10% will be located in the ADU, leaving the residential floor area of the main structure at 37%, which is below the 55%. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Ted. Are there any questions for Ted?
Madam Chair and Ted, I've got a question. Ted, can you address or comment on the excavation for, I'll call it the basement patio on the side yard? I wasn't clear on the plans. I don't think it showed real clearly where that would be and if it would meet the setbacks. So that's my question.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioner Koski. That is a different element of this project, that it is below grade and it is off of the basement. So it was something that wasn't really a part of the design we were looking at, but rather it's an extension, an external extension of the basement. And I chatted with the applicant about that a bit. I still was a bit unclear how that would work. It's certainly something that's going to be more addressed through our building department and building code. Our excavation group as well are going to be addressing that, but they are going to have to meet the setback, on that. We do have provisions. It's a strange one because we do have provisions for window wells that can go into a setback to a certain extent, but this isn't a window well. And it's going to be kind of an open basement patio structure. So it is different. And I was because it wasn't a part of the actual design of the remodel necessarily, I kind of was leaving this to see what the building department thought when they came in for their building permits and their excavation permits to actually do this. So that's really all I can say on that.
Okay, so that's going to be addressed at the building permit level and not something we need to address here. Correct?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Koski, you can certainly address it if you think it's an inappropriate part of this development. The commission has the ability to look at it and go, that's too, if you don't like the way that works, or when I talked to the applicant about it, he said that it's going to meet all setbacks and all building department requirements and public works requirements and all that. So it's unique. I've not seen something like that before. So it was a different one to try to address. You certainly have the option to address it and to even, deny it. It's just that as far as how it's going to work and function, I think is really a building department question. unless a design question, above ground anyway.
Madam Chair and Ted, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Ted? No? Okay. We will now hear from the applicant. Please state your name and address for the record.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, there we go. My name is Earl Eblin. My current address is 2121 South Philippi. Is that what you needed for the moment, or do you have questions, or do I need to start?
That's perfect. You can go ahead and start.
Okay, what I am doing is trying to add a second story and a basement area. The questions on the side there, that's actually one of my favorite spots in this, is to add that patio off the side where a basement is normally dark. My concept here has been to add a large glass window, which eliminates the window wells that I personally don't like. It allows access. It creates the access so that the lower rooms are pushed to that side of the house and have the access to be able to egress in a fire situation. Another portion of what this house is being remodeled for is because we have an upstairs currently in it that is also a narrow staircase that goes down, and a couple of skylights is the only access. And there is no, well, somebody broke out a skylight to actually get out, or to allow some ventilation up there. So we have a upstairs currently that is essentially a fire trap. Definitely does not meet any sort of fire code. So that's a couple of the issues that I'm trying to fix with this house. We left the roof line in the front of the house the same. The roof line is going to be continued back so that it does not go above the existing house. The view from the front will be changed only by the dormers that pop out. The back of the house, I do have a rather long letter from one of the neighbors that I did actually contact before our coronavirus thing came around. And I would love to have talked to everybody on the block about this and had intentions to do so, but did not feel that it was appropriate when we were in lockdown to go around and start knocking on doors. So, but I am absolutely willing to work with Mr. Shinnerman, I believe is how it's pronounced, to change that. When I was working on the garage aspect of it, he has definite concerns about the back and being overlooking his yard. And I'm more than willing to do some modifications on that. My thought when I did it was to create something that was not just a blank wall. So if he would like to reduce that somewhat and change it, I am definitely willing to work in that direction. I guess, any questions on that?
Are there any questions for Mr. Eblin? It doesn't appear so right now. So if you have nothing further, we'll go ahead and progress with the hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sherry, are you still here?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm still here.
What do you got for us?
What's that?
What do you have for us?
Just that Nina wishes to be a party of record on this one in support of the neighbor's concern and opposition to the deck that overlooks the alley. So not objecting to the project, but just supporting that concern.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Are there any questions from the commission at this point? No? Okay. We do have Mr. Shinneman signed up to testify. Are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Fantastic. If you could state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Sure. Hi, my name is Doug Shinneman, and I live on 417 West Pueblo.
and my house is directly behind the applicant's house across the alley. And although most of the modifications on the house itself, I think, are reasonable, it's true I do have concerns with the proposed two-car garage and the accessory dwelling unit, ADU. I also have a little bit of a concern too about the overall footprint of the development. I'll talk about that a little bit. But my primary concern is that the two-car garage just doesn't fit the character of the neighborhood. It's a fairly large two-story building, and it's fairly substantial in terms of its overall height and bulk. And the wraparound walkway or balcony that goes around the back, the front, and the sides of the ADU are going to give the building a pretty substantial look, almost like an apartment complex. And it really makes it much wider than a standard two-car garage too, because you're adding 3 to 6 feet on all sides of that of the garage itself. And the covered balcony on the back side of the garage would extend about 6 feet from the building, meaning it's only going to be about 4 or 5 feet away from the edge of the alley, which is pretty close to my backyard property. And that kind of is the second concern I have, is that the ADU rises, pretty tall over that backyard space, kind of providing, with the balcony especially being so close, kind of a scenic overlook, into my backyard. It provides a nice view to our bedroom, bathroom, and kitchen windows. Yeah, I think when we walk around our neighborhood, we just don't see other garages with ADUs that are that big or that have balconies and are right on the alley and face a neighbor's property like that. I just haven't seen that, not in our immediate area. My other concern is that when you add up the house, which doesn't expand much, I'm all in favor of the house remodel. I think that's great. But with the garage and the balconies, which extend out 3 or 5 feet on either side, the solid surfaces, the patios, the driveways, the parking space, the egress entrance that was discussed earlier, it really takes up a good chunk of that property. I believe some trees are going to be removed, although that wasn't clear from the application because that part of it got cut off in my copy. But it looks like some of the mature trees are going to be removed. So it's more than just the footprint of the house and the garage. I mean, quite a bit of that lot is going to be taken up by, from up above from roofs or pavement. So those are my primary concerns.
Thank you so much. And I think there was one other individual we had signed up to testify. Aaron Logan, are you here? I don't see Aaron here. Can anyone confirm if she's here?
Madam Chair, I do not see her in the attendee list.
Okay, great. If there's anyone else wishing to testify regarding this application, please virtually raise your hand. I'm not seeing anyone. Does the applicant have anything further that they would like to add in their rebuttal?
Oh, unmute by the, okay, am I clear on by, there we go.
Yes, you are on.
Okay, one of the things that was brought up is the tree. Yes, I am looking at removing one elm tree that is alongside between the house and the house to the east. I have not spoken with the actual owner in a couple of years, but when we trimmed it back previously, they were actually in favor of having that tree taken out. It is an elm tree in a small space, and they are not, definitely not one of my favorite trees. It's done damage to the house. It currently leans over the house. I did trim it. I trimmed it way back a year or two ago, and it's starting to bush again, but it is definitely something that I want to get rid of. The 2 trees in the back that Mr. Shinnerman is talking about, I had no intentions of removing them. However, one is a black, one is not even on my property, so it's not my choice. And the other one is a black locust. It is an older tree. It does drop some fairly large limbs, and I suspect that one of these days it will probably need to come out, but at this time I'm not proposing to remove it. Let's see. Oh yeah, the other point that saying that there aren't any garages like this. The house directly to the west that was just constructed a couple of years ago has a similar size of garage. Now they do not have the balconies on it, and as I said before, I'm willing to discuss definitely taking the one overlooking Mr. Shinnerman's yard off if it's not something that he is if he is offended by it. I personally, again, kind of like the balconies. It gives some outer area for that ADU unit. But again, I'm willing to make some discussions on that. So I think that's what I've got.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the applicant?
I'm sure I have a question. Mr. Evelyn, if you were to remove the balcony facing the alley that's overlooking into your neighbor's backyard, how would you access the ADU? Because it looks like you have the entrance on the alley side of the ADU.
I do have it on there at this point. It is not, I don't see that as being a large problem to move that around and rearrange that. I would move it so that it probably accessed from the front side rather than the alley side.
So from the yard side.
Yeah, and I would like to keep the balcony on the yard side.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a quick question.
Yes, please.
For the applicant, it looks like on the east side of the house, there's a couple windows that are part of the original house configuration that are being removed and reconfigured in larger opening. Can you verify that?
The front of the house is staying where it's at, back to where the existing roof line is. From there on back, I have rearranged some windows, absolutely. There are some back windows if you're speaking of the east side,
yep,
towards the rear of the house. Those were an addition at some point. They are an aluminum window. They're single pane, not in good shape. So yes, I've been wanting to move I want to move the windows over more to the mid area where it's going to have a dining area. The back portion would be a kitchen, and the stove and is currently shown against that wall, and I didn't want the windows behind the stove. So yes, I would like to rearrange the windows on the sides and the back somewhat.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, seeing none, we will close the hearing and render a decision. Do I have a motion? Discussion?
Madam Chair, I'll give this a shot.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to approve DRH 20-00135 with the conditions of approval found within the staff report and the added condition of approval that the second story balcony on the garage facing the alley shall be eliminated and the entry access point pushed to the yard side of the garage.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I will second that.
Fantastic. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I wanted to just bring up a small point. I am a little bit concerned that this addition is now making this contributing house potentially not contributing and changing the look of of the whole house by being able to see that addition from the front of the house. It's, the addition that was put on originally that kind of goes out the back is pretty subtle and you don't know it's there, but this addition is really, in my mind, from the front elevation, changing the look of the house quite a bit, and I have some concerns with that. And even though the two windows that the gentleman mentioned that are, those two that are being replaced with the larger set of windows down below, they probably aren't original, but if you look at the original house, from what I can tell, it had windows there, even though they probably weren't aluminum or whatever they are now. They were probably wood, but that's pretty significantly changing that appearance on the side of the house as well. And I would prefer if he could keep the historic window openings in that location. Anything that's done to the addition in the back, I don't have a concern with, but it's those windows. But the overall look of the house, in my mind, is changing quite a bit.
Thank you. Commissioner Richter, would you like to amend your motion?
Yeah, and I would like I appreciate Commissioner Weaver bringing that up. I may have maybe motioned a little bit too quickly and not taking that into consideration. So I do appreciate Commissioner Weaver bringing that up. So I can amend the motion that the window openings on the east side of the home shall remain the same according to the historic record of the home. Does that work?
I think so. Commissioner Koski, did you still want to second that?
Yeah, I'll happily second that. Thank you, Commissioner Weaver.
Okay, is there any additional discussion on this amended motion? Okay. Oh, was there any? No? Okay. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Montoto.
Aye.
Valderrama.
Aye.
Koski.
Aye.
Richter.
Aye.
Rupp. I may have lost Weaver.
No.
Okay. Motion carries 4-1. Commissioner Rupp abstaining.
Sorry, I say aye. I couldn't get it to unmute.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay. And the final item on our agenda tonight is item number 12, DRH 20-00137. This is a certificate of appropriateness request to construct an addition to the existing single-family structure and to construct a 2-story attached garage with an accessory dwelling unit and associated site improvements located at 1019 West Thatcher Street. And we will now hear from Ted.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. As you indicated, this is an addition toward the rear of the home as the house fronts Thatcher. The addition will occur back here with a garage, the house addition, a patio addition, and then a garage off the alley. We didn't hear from any public or neighbors on this one. So I'll go ahead and just say that we are recommending approval of DRH 2137 with recommended conditions of approval in the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ted? Okay.
Madam Chair, Ted, I have a question. On the setback of the garage, it appears that doesn't meet the correct setbacks. Are they? Is he putting the garage? Are they proposing the garage in the same spot as the old one?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Koski, the applicant will need to apply for variance. The way the lot's oriented, is that this is the rear, so there's a rear setback of 15 feet. So the structures will need to meet a 15-foot setback. So yes, the new garage, even though it's located approximately where the old garage is, it will require a variance because it's new construction.
Madam Chair, Ted, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ted? Okay, we will now hear from the applicant.
Great, am I live?
Yes, you are. Please state your name and address for the record.
Perfect. Derek Hurd, 112 East 33rd Street in Garden City. Madam Chair, Commissioners, thanks for staying here till almost 10. Maybe we can be done by 10. Ted gave you a quick overview. You've seen the project in your packet. Modest addition to the rear of the home, new garage with ADU above it. As you know, the city is very encouraging of ADUs, adding density and housing options to our great city. And just to speak to that setback issue, we are in variance application for that right now to keep the existing setback where the existing garage is now. So I think this was, Ted has suggested this for approval, and I think it was on the consent agenda. And he indicated to me that it was due to the perceived attachment to the garage. That attachment is just an open air breezeway. The structures themselves are separated by about 7 feet. This is just for practical safety reasons, snow and rain cover, accessibility from garage to the ADU by elderly and infirm is going to make that a little bit more of a welcome addition. The entire remodel project, the garage, ADU, and the addition are well set back from the street. As you can see, it's a large lot there. So we're set back, the garage is set back from the street about 75 feet. And as well as it being a very heavily landscaped area between the street and the ADU. And so speaking to that detached garage, attached versus detached, there's only one place in the guidelines that it talks about that connection, which says design and construct a garage that is part of the primary building is not appropriate. So we are, it is a different structure. It's connected by an open air breezeway, set well back from the street. So that ADU is 1.5 stories, and the dormer on that ADU matches the pitch and the height of the dormer on the home that faces 11th Street. With regards to the ADU design, we eliminated the windows on the south side, which is the closest to the neighbor that's most impacted. We did meet with them on site, and they were in support of the application. We kind of talked through where it was going to be and staked it out for them and whatnot. They were in support of the application when we last chatted. And then just on the breezeway connection, if that needs to be chatted about, I was trying to think historically of projects that connected a home with a breezeway. And I know one that I designed on Warm Springs a few years ago that's built now was connected with a similar open breezeway. And then Glancy Rockwell designed one on Warm Springs as well, which connected the very historic home to the garage with a pretty extensive remodel that won them even an Orchid Award from Preservation Idaho. So there's definitely historical precedences for the attached and even attached with breezeway garages. I think your last January hearing, there was examples of fully attached garages on the Booth property. And then Catherine B. Scott did one with an attached breezeway similar to this. And then even tonight, there was 3 different applications with attached garages and whatnot. So there's certainly precedence there in very recent history, as recently as tonight. So we're just attaching that for practicality and safety. It is open air, it's unconditioned between two standalone buildings. What else? I'll let you guys shoot questions at me if you have any, rather than going too much deeper into detail. So I'll stand or sit in this case for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd. Are there any questions? Okay, it doesn't appear so. Thank you very much. I don't have anyone on the sign-up sheet, but if there's anyone here wishing to testify regarding this application, please virtually raise your hand. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone. Are there any other questions for the applicant or Ted? Mr. Hurd, you do have some time for rebuttal if you have anything else to add.
I do not.
Okay, great. And I'm not seeing or hearing anything from my fellow commissioners. So, oh, I'm sorry. I did forget to ask Sherry. Are you still here?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Of all the projects that came before the commission tonight, this is the only one that was presented to Nina in advance and during the application process. And Nina wishes to be a party of record in support of this project with staff's conditions for approval.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So with that, I believe we can close the hearing and render a decision. Do we have a motion or any discussion?
Madam Chair. Commissioner Richter, I'd like to go ahead and approve DRH 20-00137 with the conditions approval listed within the staff report.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Fantastic. Is there any discussion on this before we vote?
Madam Chair, I'd just like to comment that I think the the project and design on an addition and a remodeling situation by Mr. Hurd is quite attractive. So I'm going to vote in favor of this.
Great. And with that, I will go ahead and have the clerk call the roll.
Montoto.
Aye.
Valderrama.
Aye.
Kowski.
Aye.
Richter.
Aye.
Rupp.
Aye.
Weaver.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. That's all we have tonight. Thank you for your dedication to our great city during this really bizarre and uncertain time. And with that, I will adjourn, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.